Hey everybody, it's your friend Adam. I'm here with Literature Double, and we're going to watch a Jordan Peterson video. It's actually by Rationality Rules. Stephen Woodford, an old arch nemesis of the channel, Snake Boy, where he supposedly debunks Jordan Peterson's archetypes. So I'm going to look at a clip here before we get into the video, because Rat Rules, his whole argument basically falls apart just when I play this clip of Jordan Peterson, because he's just basically straw manning Jordan Peterson's entire argument. So how you doing, Lit Dev? You want to say hi to everyone before we get started?
Everyone. Hello.
I got one. I got a super chat. George Ramos for $2 says first. I like it. I like it. So I went through and I took a bunch of notes like last time. Here, we'll add Smug Boy to the stream. What's up, Smug Boy?
Hello, Smug Boy.
It's Smud Boy. Hey, how's it going? I think this is the first time we've ever met. How you doing?
I just came off my own Smudcast like 5 minutes ago, so I'm a little tired, but thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Young is a favorite topic of mine. I studied a bit in university. Cool. So this is like basic good stuff. I'm not expecting complex terms here. So maybe some animus stuff, probably because it has to do with the gender binary or something like that.
Well, we're probably going to be talking more about Jungian archetypes than Rat Rules talks about in his video, because he really doesn't go into anything interesting. He's just trying to own Peterson more than anything.
We have a video called Debunking Jordan Peterson's Archetypes. I assumed he would go into the archetypes, but he does. He's like, oh, he's wrong. Okay.
So I don't know if you know the lore around Rationality Rules and myself.
I have no idea.
I did a bunch of response videos to Rationality Rules, and Rationality Rules did a response video to me. And in the response video, he proved that he doesn't know what post hoc rationalization is. He thinks post hoc rationalization and the post hoc fallacy are the same thing. Can you imagine such a thing?
Can he actually make arguments? Because I'm going by this video alone, I don't think he can actually make arguments. He kind of comments and allows like Sam Harris to make a terrible argument for him. He can't even make a terrible argument in this video.
So I made a bunch of response videos to him, and he basically just responded and lied. He said that I was a self-described troll. Like, out of people who troll on YouTube, I got to be pretty close to the bottom. Like, do I troll people? Am I like on Twitter, saying incendiary things just to troll people? I feel like I'm not.
I thought you were. I thought that was your whole thing. Come on.
No, not even close. I'm the guy.
I thought you were a brother and trolled him.
I'm the guy who gives people the benefit of the doubt, much to my audience's chagrin. I mean, they don't like that stuff. They like Adam beating up on people and getting triggered right and left. But that's not really me. So in the video, just so this is not totally out of context. So one of Rationality Rules' tricks is that he likes to tell people that Peterson believes metaphorical truth is literal truth. What? Here, I'll play the clip because it opens up with the claim that he's making, and then me pulling out a clip where Jordan Peterson proves that he understands exactly the opposite. So let me just jump to it here.
So then he goes on to say this.
I got to slow this down a bit here. You guys can hear the audio, right?
I think I've been made from I think over a year or maybe 2 years of listening to videos like this, I've become biased against the British accent or whatever this accent is. I hear this accent, and all of a sudden, boom! I see like, okay, he must be woke. This is going to be from a woke sort of perspective.
I don't know that he's that woke. He got in a big dust up over. He made a trans sports video that like the wokerati basically came after him, and he had to get on both knees and say, "Oh please, don't hate me."
Usually, when you have to bow down to the woke mob, you're probably woke.
Yeah, you're in bad shape.
You've slit your hand and dripped blood on the altar of wokeness at that point.
You can hear the audio, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes.
And his ilk want to call that which serves life, or that which increases human flourishing, true, then that's fine. Again, it's confusing because it means, for example, that if the fact that atoms store potential energy should one day prove fatal to us, then while this fact will remain true in the colloquial/realist sense of the word, it will all of a sudden become false in the Peterson sense of the word.
Okay, this is completely false. Peterson does not think that facts are a subjective thing. The amount of energy stored in an atom is an objective fact. What Peterson's truth is based on is something that we might call wisdom. And what Peterson is saying is that if we are annihilated by nuclear weapons, then it probably wasn't the wisest thing to order our interests in those particular facts.
You guys understand. I don't know how deeply you've gone into Peterson. You can tell anyone who's developed like a chart like this on their computer. I made this chart here. has done some thinking about objective truth versus metaphorical truth with Peterson versus Harris. So he's basically saying there are these facts in the world. How you order those facts is subjective. Sure. And moral truth is the ordering of the facts, the hierarchy of values that he's always talking about.
Well, I mean, if you're coming from a Jungian perspective, if we're going from the idea where Carl Jung came from, he goes into archetypes. What archetypes basically are just kind of the collective unconscious, and archetypes have no actual physical form. They have no symbol to them. They kind of manifest as different things. So that's kind of where it comes from. Where metaphorical truth. What that means, it's kind of the symbol of what something is actually real. So these archetypes, that's
not right. That's not right.
I'm talking about the archetype specifically.
But metaphorical truth, though, is a very specific term, and people, I mean, a lot of the scientific types kind of object to metaphorical truth, even though, I mean, I think the concept is great. Metaphorical truth is something that may not be actually true, but if you believe it's true, you will end up increasing your survival and reproductive gains. So there are certain examples. I think in one of the Peterson Harris talks, they talked about a gun. Like acting like a gun is always loaded, even though the gun might not actually be loaded, is kind of a metaphorical truth, because it might be loaded. So metaphorical truth.
At the same time.
So the conflation here, and it's funny too, because Rationality Rules later in a video, like maybe 2 years later, finally understands the concept of metaphorical truth, even though I made all these response videos to him, and makes this video just basically lavishing praise on Brett Weinstein because of this metaphorical truth thing. And I'm like, you dummy. Like, what the hell do you think Jordan Peterson is talking about when he talks about true enough? He's talking about metaphorical truth. You moron.
So I mean, with this Jungian archetype stuff, and when that becomes an issue, I mean, I think he kind of pointed out too in the video, where it's like the archetypes are not rock solid. They kind of appear as different things, but the idea behind the archetypes, those are actually shared. So we kind of we have the collective unconscious of maybe the hero, and we all have this idea of what a hero is, but it comes in different forms depending on where we see these developments occur.
But I think that's a cultural thing, though. I don't actually agree with Jung on any of this shit. So, but surprisingly, I'm pro Peterson, but I don't believe in any of the Jung stuff.
Yeah, some people do believe
Jung rather.
For example, you kind of get that a lot in the hero's journey. Like the hero's journey, it's actually originally called the monomyth, and then we kind of colloquially call it the hero's journey. But the hero of the thousand faces, or that sort of thing.
You're going way too fast, literature double.
Okay.
We're talking about metaphorical truth here. The difference between it's important. It's just important for the video here, because Rationality Rules has one claim that he constantly makes. He makes this claim that Peterson doesn't believe in objective truth. That Peterson believes metaphorical truth is objective truth. Like he literally right in the video here, he made a claim that if we were annihilated by a nuclear strike, that the energy stored in an atom would be, like, the truth claim of that would be in question. When Jordan Peterson would never say anything like that. Can you imagine Jordan Peterson making a claim like that? That because we annihilated ourselves by nuclear weapons, that all of a sudden the matter in an atom, the energy level of the matter of an atom would change, would not be true any longer. Like, that's ridiculous. That's like a Deepak Chopra level claim. Well, that's a claim he makes in the video here, but I want to play the clip of Jordan Peterson actually saying the opposite of that, and rationality rules just being too dense to actually get it. I mean, Jordan Peterson says it a lot all the time, and I don't know if you've listened to these Peterson Harris podcasts, but they have like two 2-hour podcasts on this topic of truth.
He
says it like multiple times. Yeah, did you watch these when they first came out?
Oh my god! The only thing I've heard of Jordan Peterson mainly is 12 Rules for Life, and his perspective on stories and things.
You've stumbled into a Jordan Peterson like. I know so much about Jordan Peterson just because this whole idea of metaphorical truth is fascinating to me. I love evolutionary psychology, and Jordan Peterson is basically an evolutionary psychologist. So this is another thing that's infuriating about Rationality Rules. Rationality Rules is like an anti-theist channel. He starts every video with like my fellow apes or whatever. So you think he'd be like an evolution devotee. You think he would understand this stuff. Nah, it totally sails over his head. Here, I'll continue, guys.
I could have sworn that isn't like Jordan Peterson, isn't he like support religion, but he's like an atheist? That's what I heard so far.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson is, many believe, myself included, a secret atheist. Yes, that's why also this video is ridiculous, because Rationality Rules is like beating up a guy who's not even a real Christian. It's ridiculous. Let's get to the clip. I just want to play the Jordan Peterson clip, and I took a bunch of notes. This was your suggested video, Lit Dev. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
An interest in nuclear weapons close to the top. It is an unwise thing to do, not an untrue thing to do. And Peterson says this in the original Sam Harris Jordan Peterson podcast.
It's possible for there to be scientifically correct, realistically true conceptions of the world.
Okay, so that's the objective truth, scientific truth,
that are bad for us. There are not many examples of that. I think the utility of knowing what's going on is usually so high that it's better to know what's going on. But for instance, I mean, the example I occasionally use is there is a right way to synthesize the smallpox virus. To point out that this is dangerous, to point out that it would be irresponsible to spread this knowledge, to point out that in the wrong hands, this could be catastrophic and in fact could end the human experiment, right? Mm-hmm. The career of the species. So it could be very anti-Darwinian, to use your framing, in a local
metaphorical truth. Okay. The knowledge is metaphorical truth.
Sense with respect to Homo sapiens, because this could be the thing that kills all of us, right?
Right.
That's, yes, catastrophic, fine. But that doesn't undermine the scientific truth value of.
But it undermines, I agree, but it does.
Oh my God, did he just say, I agree? I thought I heard him say, I agree. I agree.
No way. There's no way that could happen.
Well, I think Sam Harris, these two guys agree on a lot of things. They squibble about the details a lot.
But hold on. Sam Harris just said, it doesn't undermine the truth claim of the scientific truth claim. He just said, yes, I agree. It doesn't undermine the scientific truth claim.
The claim that scientific truth is the ultimate truth. That's the claim that it undermines.
It undermines this completely different truth, the metaphorical truth, that scientific truth is the ultimate truth. That's the claim that it undermines. Yes, so there's these two truths going on. I just have to get this clear, because Rat Rules comes out and says, "Whoa, Jordan Peterson doesn't believe in scientific truth. Isn't that bonkers? Isn't that crazy? He doesn't even believe in scientific truth.
And
he was an instructor at Harvard, and he doesn't believe in scientific truth. Can you imagine such a thing?"
I'm pretty sure that claim is crazy. Like, of course, Jordan Peterson believes in scientific truth.
No shit.
Of course he does.
You can't. Jordan Peterson has like 165 IQ. Like, you're telling me he doesn't believe in scientific truth? What a fucking moron.
See, Jordan Peterson is saying that the truth claim about the amount of energy in an atom is still correct. He is saying that there are two separate claims.
That doesn't undermine the scientific truth value of.
But it undermines. I agree. But it does.
See, I had to hammer it home three times just in case. Fantastic. Just in case old Rationality Rules didn't understand it. Now, when he made a response video, but I don't get it. For some reason, he didn't respond to this point in his response video to me. Why? Why is that? Why do you think he didn't respond to that?
It's an inconvenient truth.
Okay, I'll stop talking now. You guys can make your. I'm sorry to interrupt. You guys can make your point about Jungian archetypes. I'll bring up the other video.
Yeah, sure. Maybe we can wait. I guess we should wait until he makes those points specifically.
Sure.
Yeah, I took a bunch of notes here. I go through these things, and I mean, I try to take notes beforehand just to make the show interesting. And I discovered a bunch of people left me comments last time to my notes on Yaron Brooks video, which I do this all the time. So it's kind of funny that it's in the video now, but I just try to make them comical. So I put garbage tier content from a garbage tier liar. This whole video is Stephen Woodford showcasing his own ignorance. And I got 04 here. Woodford is going to mansplain Harvard professor Jordan Peterson's beliefs. Well, okay. In the other truth vid, Woodhead mentions in the other vid, Woodhead mentions, because he mentions another vid in the video here. Steve describes Peterson's belief as new age, mind over matter, secret level stuff, when in reality, they're just Durkheimian metaphorical truth, something Woodford actually praises in a later Brett Weinstein video, though he's too stupid to make the connection. So we're probably just going to go through the whole video here, but I just want to point out a couple of things here. 333, there is a difference between, and this is maybe you guys want to talk about this a bit before we get into the video. There is a difference between cultural evolution and biological evolution. Instinct is biological. Anything taught is cultural. Knowledge is often encoded in cultural tradition instead of biology. Different traditions often use religious methods of preparing food without any awareness that these methods actually remove toxins. The people with less faith actually end up poisoning themselves, hence the evolutionary pressure to respect seemingly meaningless traditions. Fear of snakes may be biological, but the archetypes are cultural. They are rooted in a biological fear that makes them more powerful. Now, that's my contention with Jung. I don't actually think these archetypes, and I'm not, I've listened to a lot of Peterson, but I'm not 100% sure Peterson would not make the same distinction that I'm making here, that the archetypes are in fact cultural, but rooted in like a biological fear of snakes just to make them more powerful. What's your take?
I would not go that far either. He's whenever he writes something, he's not just approaching from a Jungian perspective. He ends up using the metaphorical truths found in the Bible. So if he talked about snakes, he'll have some analogy with that. So it's kind of hard to read him. Like, I don't know if you guys remember reading 12 Rules, but it wasn't just analogy. It wasn't just science. It wasn't just his private practice. It wasn't just his professional practice with students. It was all of these things. So that's why it's sort of hard to see where he's coming from as an author. It's still intelligent stuff. And he's really heavy on the Jungian stuff. So I don't think he would pull from the collective unconscious to argue, well, everyone felt pain. Everyone was bitten by a snake. Well, not everyone was bitten by a snake. Yeah. So he would have to say, well, we know the basics of the metaphor. So the elephant in the room. No one has literally seen the elephant in the room, but we know what the emotion. But we know the emotion behind that is sticking out in everyone. So he knows the feeling behind that, and whether that's an intellectual, cultural phenomenon or just an emotional one. That is what is getting close to what is a memorable scene that you can say, okay, I had this experience. Bob had this experience. We remember it in our own subjective way, but the emotion's the same. We can name that, and that's part of the collective unconscious. And whether that's stored within the self or the animus or whatever part of that Jungian invented, it's up to interpretation. I wouldn't know. But so long as we address what those are, I don't even know if Jordan will do that in this clip, but it becomes clear what those truths are to him. So I don't think it's this mystical. He's not like rewriting Jung. He's not inventing stuff. It's all there. So
to me, Peterson seems to use Jungian archetypes as a talking point, kind of in order to connect points that he's making with these with stuff that's more cultural and to story and to, because story and myth go back a long way. Story and myth is how we carry our culture along. It's kind of like a cultural DNA. Like, those are things that we kind of see. We look back on the past of like a different various cultures. We can see having like a kind of a window into the mindset, windows into how they lived through the power of story. So we can look at someone like the old oral traditions of the caveman, and we can see their stories about maybe some brave hunter or some monster that was slain. And we get to see that, and they have different meanings behind these stories. We get to see what they thought of these things. What kind of hero what do they see a hero as? What do they see a healer as? What do they see as a mother, a father, a mentor? Those sorts of things. And because of that, and that's why there's so many different storytelling traditions across the world, because it's kind of shaped by what they found important, shaped by what they want, where they found meaning. Like you have everyone knows. I mean, everyone in the West probably is familiar with the Freytag's pyramid or triangle. That's one where you have the development, rising action, falling action, things like that. You have the Hakawati system that was in the Middle East. That was oral tradition. That was very, very interesting, kind of interwoven, kind of almost a quilt style of storytelling. They kind of weave different stories within one another. It's kind of like, I think, have you ever read the Arabian Nights thing, 1001 Arabian Nights? It was kind of like that, but told in oral tradition. And you have the Kisho Tenketsu story style in Japan, which is kind of incidentally what anime is made of. But they all have these unified ideas and forms and things. Where you have the hero, you always have the idea of a hero, and that becomes the archetype, and you find that in these heroes kind of arise. But that's when culture comes in. What does culture see as heroic? And to me, that's what Jordan Peterson usually uses archetype is to hammer home a point that he's making, but not as absolute truth, not like this is the overall thing. It's kind of, he uses that as a connection, a kind of a bullet point, a punch to a point that he's making with coming from like scientific truth or his a more kind of biological or scientific sort of assertion, not necessarily this is absolutely true, but the archetypes are in the collective unconscious form is or kind of coming from that idea and perspective. The archetypes are universal in that we as human beings kind of all see these same symbols, but culturally speaking, we kind of see them in different forms and different lights and things. So that's how I think Jordan Peterson uses these archetypes. What I've seen, I don't have as near the experience of listening or watching Jordan Peterson as you do, but from that's my perspective as coming from what I have seen of him.
I want to just make clear the distinction between the biological versus the cultural, because it does come up in the video, and I can't imagine that these archetypes are biologically based, because if they were biologically based, it seemed like every society throughout history would have the same archetypes. I can't imagine like the archetypal hero for Genghis Khan and his hordes is the same as the archetypal hero of Jesus. Like they're completely different, almost antithetical.
The old phrase of someone's villain is someone else's hero, someone's hero, someone else's villain, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but your cult, like telling the story is the process of encoding that information into culture.
I think what was said, I think at least in the hero's journey, it was that they're from shared experiences, not necessarily things that are ingrained in us biologically, but shared cultural experiences, and which could vary and differ depending on where you are in the world and how your culture perceives these things.
Totally. Well, and also there's a bit of an evolution process going on with cultural evolution, because societies maintain that culture. Like Brett Weinstein says this all the time. We offload information to the cultural layer, and the cultural layer is easier to change. Obviously, it's much more difficult to change our genes, but we can change our culture. So when a culture is successful, it catches on quickly. So that's an important point. And the thing that bugs me about anti-theists and rationality rules types is just, you read the book by Joseph Henrich, The Secret of Our Success, and there's so much information hidden inside these traditions that people aren't aware of. He goes back and looks at just like the food preparation in different places around the world, and they always say, this is our tradition, this is the way we do it. They don't know the fact that they're actually taking toxins and whatnot out of their stuff. And in the modern world, we have food processing that takes a lot of toxins out of our food, but we don't think about it because it's the processing. But I'm sure it's encoded in some food processing book somewhere. It's become culture.
It's kind of where the importance of tradition comes from, like tradition.
True.
It's where, like your ancestors in the past probably figured out this, you got to cook your food and everything. And then that became part of their tradition in some way or another through story or religion or whatever it is. And then eventually you kind of evolve culturally where we're still doing that. Maybe we've forgotten why we're doing that.
Yes.
Like the knowledge has been long gone, but we're still doing it, and we've forgotten why. But the thing is, there's a reason why we do this in the first place. The reason why we do these practices in the first place, even though we've forgotten them. But they've encoded it so that their ancestors can remember it and continue to do so, and they do that through cultural means like story or religion or just ritual. Ritual is a big one. Ritual is a huge thing. That's an enormous thing. Do not can never downplay the importance of ritual in the culture and story. It's a very, very, very powerful element. And
so this is also Peterson's argument in the Sam Harris podcast on why we should elevate metaphorical truth above scientific truth, because he's saying the metaphorical truth gives context. So and also gives context and conceals scientific truths that are nested within that metaphorical truth. So if you look at something like food preparation, right? They have this religious way of preparing the food and don't necessarily know what the scientific truths about, leaching the toxins out or whatever it's doing. Those truths are nested below because they don't even have access to those truths. So it makes sense from an argumentative point of view.
That just sounds like a fancy way of marketing nursery rhymes for the modern age.
Yeah, exactly. Well, nursery rhymes are a way of remembering. They're a way of encoding cultural truths, right? So 6:15, Steve sucks off Peterson for a spell. I just think it's funny because he always this is one of the things I like about Peterson, and then people rage in the comments about why'd you say you liked Peterson? We hate Peterson.
You can't support Peterson in any way.
He's an idiot. Everything he says is wrong. It's except for these things I like. Yeah. Oh.
Steve conflates 6:56. Steve conflates metaphorical truth and scientific truth. Peterson is saying the stories contain metaphorical truths, hidden truth that aids survival, and Steve argues that Peterson thinks the stories are literally true. Also, Robert McKee calls storytelling to the extreme the negation of the negation. I looked it up, and that's like a Marxian term. Figures Robert McKee's a big, probably know Robert McKee from he's like a big Hollywood guy.
Really?
Yeah, you probably know him from. Have you heard of him, Literature Devil? Because you cover a bunch of stuff like that.
Not that I know of, no.
Robert McKee. Yeah, he's a big screenwriter. He was actually featured in the movie. What's the movie?
Oh yeah, with what's his name?
With Nick
Cage. Was it Nick Cage?
Nick Cage.
Oh, Nicolas Cage. That's awesome. Yeah. So already sounding good to me.
What is that movie?
Adaptation?
Adaptation. That's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. That is a good one. That's a good one.
Robert McKee. He's not the actor. The actor isn't. Robert McKee's not in the movie, but an actor plays him. But yeah, he's a huge Hollywood guy. Everyone in Hollywood used to talk about story, and then Save the Cat came out, and everyone would switch to that. That was their book. They're like, "Fuck story. It's too hard to negation of the negation. What is this nonsense?" So 9:20. Now we're pretty far into the video. Sitch's law comes in. Obviously, Steve wants to argue.
I heard that before. What is Sitch's law?
90% of all debates are over definitions.
Oh, that is from what I've seen. That tends to be pretty true. I mean,
I wouldn't say that, but I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, this kind of an argument over semantics, and like actually what you mean here is yeah.
It happens. Redefinitions happen a lot, but I wouldn't say that's the bulk of a
once you start noticing it, it seems like
this is what you learn very early on in university, and these are 3 rules I have. Anyone who starts an argument or wants to get into an argument about politics, religion, or semantics, you immediately stop.
Yes. Good. Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Well, see, I kind of have that rule too, and it really precludes me from engaging in a lot of debates because I'm hyper aware of it now, and as soon as I see it, I'm like, oh my God, we're arguing definitions right here. Sitch's law. Steve wants to argue the definition of perfect. The whole point
he does.
Like, the whole point of the archetype is to celebrate sacrifice, to encourage it culturally. But Steve has nothing to say on this. He just wants to bash Peterson for views.
He does. And it's kind of odd because I saw the video's title and said, I'm going to debunk Jordan Peterson's archetypes. What he really means is religious archetypes.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do that either. But I
he
mean,
doesn't do any of that.
Doesn't do any of that. He barely does anything at all. He kind of like, hey, hello, everyone. Here's Sam Harris for a little bit. Hi, I'm back. Here's Sam Harris again. Here's Jordan Peterson again. Like, he doesn't really do much. He doesn't do any argumentation. He's kind of just has Sam Harris do the speak. Like, I can just watch the podcast. I mean, he doesn't really add much as far. I watched it twice.
Yeah, his commentary is weak sauce. So 11, 13, Peterson does not believe facts that are metaphorically false are literally false. Lies, 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 lies. And that's why I wanted to show you the clip first, because just
Jordan
as soon as
Peterson
he starts talking, go ahead.
Jordan Peterson. Dr. Jordan Peterson does not believe in scientific truth or objective truth or anything like that. That's it. That's ridiculous. That's how. Like, in what way can you prove that he doesn't believe in scientific truth?
First off, he's a professor of psychology.
Which is a fucking science. Last I checked,
he has made arguments on live TV broadcasts throughout the world, stating actual scientific statements by other scientists that he and other psychologists also believe in. And there's not like a belief in the sense of I believe that gravity is a downward force or whatever, a pulling force. This is just the scientific method in action. Like, there's really no argument saying I think it's good or bad. No, this is the way it is. This is all the evidence we found. There's no meandering around the definition.
Yeah, so, this. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the way. Like, this is not his belief system. This is just the fact. And he's trying to hammer that idea home to people who don't understand the scientific process of how they create scientific law. And it's so obvious. He's like, listen, this is not my opinion. I'm trying to tell you this again. I'm not just saying this as my opinion. This is what science has discovered. And he's trying his best to this one. I can't remember if it was the journalist who interviewed him, but it was just this ridiculous thing. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to repeat myself, and you're not listening to me.
Was it Kathy Newman? It's Kathy Newman.
It might have been her. I don't remember.
Yeah. That was a famous one. Like, so what you're saying is you hate all women. No. so what you're saying is you want to commit genocide. No, it's not what I'm saying.
It was about gender roles, I think.
Probably. I think it wasn't where he's like saying wasn't he saying something like you think that women want to dominate men? Like, well, it depends on what you mean. And she kept hammering on those points. And she kind of shamed him for having a predominantly male audience too. That's kind of funny.
You guys are such tepid Jordan Peterson fans. It's funny.
Well, the thing is, when you read his books, and I love his books, the problem is they're not good books.
Really? Oh, yeah. I thought his second book was amazing.
That's what I mean. I enjoyed it.
Abandoned Ideology is great,
and it has like 4 and 5. As I said, they have analogies. They have his practice, his school professional work, Bible references, like all these great things. The thing is, you don't tell a coherent message by referencing this and referencing that and changing tone and talking about your family and then jumping around. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Are you giving me medicine? Or are you giving me a life story? Like, what are you trying to do?
Well, he very much writes like a novelist, so you got to be into that. I mean, but I think he writes great.
I have read various psychologists over the years. They don't write like that.
I agree.
They focus specifically on the problem, and they give you medicine on how to solve that problem. They give you examples how that works, and they're personal examples. They can go off topic. That's fine, but it's usually for a goal. In this case, the 12 rules are like, pet a cat. You're like, what? Why?
I just want to see this guy debunk Red Skull and see how well he does.
I think Peterson writes as good as Steinbeck easily. So I mean, if you can write as good as Steinbeck, you might as well. So I'm willing to give it to him. If it was something I didn't like, I'd probably be more on your side. I mean, I'm an avid reader of nonfiction, so I can relate to exactly what you're saying, but at the same time, and it's funny, I always get his books wrong because, like I said, I thought his second book, which is really his third book, his first book I thought was awful. Maps of Meaning is just terrible.
Tough.
Yeah.
You mean the 12? You mean his third book is that the 12 More Rules for Life?
12 More Rules. Yeah, exactly. But
that one I haven't gotten yet.
Peterson actually made the same mistake as me on his podcast recently, where he said he called his latest book his second book when it's really his third, and I'm like, okay,
getting a little bit of slack. I mean, he's had some trouble.
Yeah, but he's basically admitting, yeah, the first book was a piece of garbage already. I mean, he probably wrote it when he was in his 20s. So
yeah, they can't all be winners. I mean, come on.
yeah, it's not
Writing
great.
is tough. Writing is tough, even for the most experienced veteran. Writing is very, very tough.
There is a book called Why We Need Religion by Stephen Asma, which I think is the book that Jordan Peterson was going for, but he wrote it in his 20s and it's kind of incomprehensible. But Why We Need Religion is an amazing book that goes into a lot of the science on why religion is metaphorical truth, basically good for us. So I'll get into the video a little bit and then I'll read some super chats, guys.
So this is the second video in which I tackle a pillar of Jordan Peterson's religious
tackle. What are you talking about?
He has no tackling in this video.
There's absolutely zero tackling.
I was kind of excited about this video because I saw the title. I was like, okay, fine, we're going to get some Jungian archetypes. We're going to check them out. We're going to go to the shadow and the animus. It's going to be great.
No.
And then you can imagine my disappointment when I watched the video. Like,
none of that.
I thought it sounded like he was a smart guy, like he was going to go into all this stuff. And I was really gung-ho. And then I was really disappointed. But I already said, hey, let's cover this. I'm excited. But then I was like, okay, well, too late to change my mind. He himself says almost nothing.
Yeah.
And this whole video.
I think you're using an American football verb as opposed to the normal verb of tackle. So.
Yeah, American football tackle. Yeah, it's that one.
And so if you haven't already watched the first, which is dedicated...
You're American lit dev, right?
No, yeah, very American.
Okay. Why? I didn't know.
Oh yeah, very American. American hell is what I live in.
Are you real? Are you? I can't tell if you're lying or not.
Yeah, I voted Trump and everything. So I'm most American.
Smud boy, are you American?
I'm Canadian.
Yeah,
Canadian. Okay. Because these Canadians sound so much like Americans. You never know.
They can infiltrate. But Smud boy, so far as I know, has managed to evade the current Canadian concentration camps.
Did you vote in the last election, lit dev?
Yes, of course I did.
Okay. American.
America.
You're an honorary American today, Smud boy. Just
thank you so much.
I've been an avid voter since I was in high school. So yeah, I voted in the last election.
I do enjoy American whiskey the most, or bourbon rather. So Tennessee and Kentucky are my favorites.
Here we go. Captain Mame, Adam, are you American? LD, fuck yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I'm addicted to freedom. I like freedom. Freedom addict.
Of course we are.
To his epistemology, then I'd highly recommend that you do. If only because, not surprisingly, his concept of truth is tightly intertwined with his other religious beliefs, including those regarding archetypes.
That's where I had a little bit of trouble.
His concept of truth, which you've totally strawmanned.
And his religious beliefs, because I could have sworn that Jordan Peterson was an atheist. So I know that Jordan Peterson, like, he kind of argues for religion. Like, he doesn't, he kind of defends religion and religious people, but I never thought he was actually religious and therefore does not have any religious beliefs.
Yes, exactly. Well, he did a video and Rationality Rules responded to it, where he said that religion, he basically uses the Durkheimian definition of religion, where religion is something that you have great devotion to, I think is the dictionary definition. And I'm always saying anti-theists are religious too. You know, they're addicted to anti-theist activism. Their central belief is that the world would be a better place without religion, and they're going out to try to, proselytize people to that message. I don't know how you don't call that a religion. So, but they get super bent out of shape because they're anti-religious, right? So they're like, how dare you say that I'm religious?
You go on.
Well, he in a video, he basically brought up the dictionary definition of religion, and in the dictionary it says, something you pursue with great devotion. And I'm like, dude, it's right there in the dictionary. It's on the screen right now. What? Tell me you're not like pursuing this with great devotion. You are.
I once learned about a school of thought that between anti and pro, and anti seems to be more toxic than being pro something. So like you have totally. two sets of rallies. You have an anti-war rally and a pro-peace rally. Which one would you rather go to?
Yeah,
I think most people would rather go to the pro-peace rally, right? Because that's going to be full of love, and it's about expression of love for something, where anti-war is about expression of hatred for something. So it's going to be filled with hatred. And hatred, a little bit of hatred can be healthy for some people. You know, for most people, a little bit of hatred, a little bit of something. The golden mean idea, not too much, but not too little. You know, taste, but don't touch. You know, that sort of thing. So yeah, a little bit. But when you're all about the hatred, that can really, really mess with you, and it can really, really burden your mind. It can become toxic if you overindulge in negative emotions like that. Whereas opposed to like pro peace, that one it's all about, hey, let's support peace. Let's be friendly with each other. Let's celebrate something we enjoy and love, which can be liberating.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you there. Unfortunately, so many of these, I know, I just threw a dislike. Unfortunately, so many communities now form around what you hate. Like that's the whole thing. The anti-SJW community hates the woke. The fandom menace hates the new Star Wars. The Comicsgate hates what mainstream comics has become. Like so many of these communities form around hate.
Yeah, they do, because it's very dangerous, because what's happening is that these people have different groups have formed around the idea of loving something, ironically enough, and then seeing the stuff that they love being destroyed and them being helpless to stop it is what's causing the hate. So it's passion. It's really Henry Cavill pointed this out very, very well when he was confronted by an interviewer who said, what do you think about these toxic fandoms, these toxic hate that these fandoms are doing? It's like it's not toxic, it's passion. These fans
are Cavill.
That was Henry Cavill. He said that in an interview. Like these fans are not toxic; they're passionate. And what you have to do if you're going to dabble in established fandoms, you have to know that it's a double-edged sword. Now, on one hand, you're getting a set of built-in enthusiastic fans, but on the other side, you're getting a set of very enthusiastic fans. You want to appease them while you're making your own story. So it's kind of like you are getting a big boost. But on the other hand, you have more restrictions and guidelines that you have to adhere to, so you can placate most. You're never going to make all the fans happy. Some of them are going to be mad, but you're going to placate most of the fans. And it's not that hard. All you got to do is respect the legacy. And I think I saw Aiden Palin say that in the chat, that nomenclature has a major influence on psychology. Absolutely. And I'm not
nomenclature. What's that mean?
Oh,
no, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it kind of pointed me with the nomenclature, where the names and things, where the specific, where you're going to
basically semantics.
Semantics, setting things in categories, things like that. Specific
the devising or choosing names for things, especially in science or other disciplines.
Yeah. So you have the nomenclature in biology, things that the different names that are assigned to different animal species, things like that. You can go with that. But that kind of reminds me of Alan Moore. Have you seen any of Alan Moore's perspective on things?
I've watched some of his interviews. Awesome. He's bonkers.
He's crazy. It's awesome. You gotta watch it. I mean,
he hates everything.
He's a magician.
Oh my god.
He's a self-proclaimed magician. But the thing is, he doesn't. It's not really this the magic as we have come to know, like the black magic or whatever. He actually uses magic of words, where there's a sentence out there that if I tell you this sentence, you will do what I want you to do, and that is technically true. Like if I tell you this one phrase, you will change your mind, or your perspective will change. And he calls that a spell, and he kind of describes the spell as not like the casting of magic, but like the spelling of a word, and the using words in such a way that you cast a spell on someone with words. And you can see that in speeches and discussions and things like that. People use these grand speeches and ways of speaking and things like in order to sway people, or to hypnotize, technically, to kind of hypnotize people into coming over to the side of you. It's really interesting. So, but the thing is, titles, names, words, they all have very powerful impacts on psychology and how we perceive things. That's why a lot of writers have that power, and where you can use different words and for different effects. There's for example, a very simple example of this is action words. You have what I've seen and what I've learned is that when a little thing about writing is that when you want to get the right reader involved, you use action words first. Like he punched him in the face. His fist collided with the man's nose, and his nose crunched beneath his. It feels more real. You can get into it more, as opposed to something more abstract. You get right into the visceral parts of it, and you can use more visceral wording to send your message across and to get people involved and to engross them in your story. So it's kind of like that. But yeah, Alan Moore is crazy, but I suggest listening to him anyway, because it is a fascinating crazy.
Yeah.
Sounds
words do have affect, and he Rationality Rules makes basically says in here that archetypes and stereotypes are the same thing, and I'm totally triggered by that, because the affect for there's a negative affect to stereotypes that archetypes, and there's a positive affect to archetypes. So to conflate those two is just, I mean, it's weird. Yeah.
Now, before we get to business, as it were, the winner of this month's giveaway has won a signed. Anyhow, back to
business. Is that his book?
This is.
No, it's Aaron Raw's book.
Oh,
Aaron
isn't that
Raw
another YouTuber?
Yeah, he is.
Something like that.
Aaron Raw is another anti-theist. Who knows everything there is to know about evolution, but doesn't seem to understand how cultural evolution works. It's ridiculous. Like the biggest argument against all these anti-theists is, if religion is so dangerous and so, detrimental to humanity's survival, why the hell is it everywhere? It makes it seem like it might actually be some sort of evolutionary adaptation to me. I don't know.
It's a powerful force. It's something that's have you ever seen people without religion? They kind of gravitate towards something else in place of that.
Yeah, totally. Something that they can pursue with great devotion to build their tribe, so they can get resources from the environments.
Because we're social creatures, so we have this collective ideas and the collective culture.
Everyone keep wearing masks so you get less oxygen to your brain. It's a great idea.
Exactly.
I've been maskless in 2 stores now. It's so cool. Like in California, you can go maskless in stores if you've been vaccinated. So
yeah, I've been vaccinated, so me not wearing a mask isn't really much of a protest anymore.
The masks are coming off.
Generosity of my Southern brothers to donate 1 million free vaccines to my glorious country. So I'm just waiting for that delivery to come in.
Did you guys get vaccinated, or are you guys?
We're waiting for our second shipment, but we ran out, so we have to wait for charity. So,
how about getting vaccinated by free will, like free vaccinations of free will? That'd be good.
Yeah. Well, no.
Jordan Peterson's Archetypes, Debunked.
Look at that, Jordan. He's so. Oh my God, the humorist.
Jordan Peterson's Archetypes. He made them up.
Jordan. There's a reason why humility is a virtue.
It really is.
A lot of people could learn humility here.
What does anyone know what Jordan's archetypes are, by the way?
Jordan doesn't. I don't know if he even has any
archetypes. I thought he just argued Jungian archetypes. That's as far as I've heard. So I don't think Jordan Peterson has any archetypes.
Yeah, exactly.
Down a bit of groundwork, and I'll explain precisely why in just a moment. The word archetype has existed for millennia, and its etymology is rooted in ancient Greek. The prefix arche means primitive or origin, and the suffix tupus means pattern, model, or type.
Okay, so I will give him credit here. He does define his terms, which is something that has, surprising enough, is head and shoulders above a lot of videos I've seen.
I agree.
Boring. I don't know. It's just boring.
Split and I have covered so many videos where they make these sort of arguments without defining the terms that this is kind of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it's true. Defining terms is kind of necessary, but it is just, I feel like it's fluffer work here.
Look, it kind of is.
Original model. These days, however, it's generally used to describe a very typical or perfect example of a particular kind of person or thing, and it's primarily used in reference to books and films. For example, characters that are archetypically the mentor tend to be old, wise, parental figures to especially hero archetypes, and they tend to teach others, reveal a larger world, and are removed before the end so that the hero can face the Leviathan or villain archetype alone. And so, in a nutshell,
the mentor archetype. This has been a big problem in modern day fiction, where they don't have like a mentor. I mean, they technically have mentors, but then the hero is just so awesome that they never really need a mentor. They teach themselves.
First off, there is no Leviathan.
No, it's usually it's more like a dragon, like it's the villain.
But that's what I mean. Like if he's referencing Jordan or he's referencing Young, there is no Leviathan.
There's no Leviathan. That's kind of one thing I noticed that he says.
Well, what does that mean?
Leviathan is like the thing the monster from religion. Usually in writing circles you refer to that as a dragon, universally. It's a dragon and dragon is kind of an overall depiction of any sort of enemy, any sort of conquest, or something you have to overcome. So basically, the conflict that eventually the hero must face in order to succeed.
The archetype, he might be referring to a pattern, like a trope in storytelling, but when you're talking about archetypes, they're personality aspects or aspects of a person or a character. So it's always based off what is the modus of this character trying to do. So there's like the explorer, there's someone who seeks fame and fortune, or the hero, or the everyman. Those are the archetypes.
I get what you're saying. So the Leviathan is the monster, but the monster isn't an archetype because it's not the thing that you as a human being would emulate.
Well, it might be in someone else's definition, but definitely not Jung and definitely not Jordan.
Okay, that's interesting. That's super interesting. Yeah, and also, I mean, would you call the wise, teacher a stereotype?
Well,
seems
yes,
way different,
and also an archetype. You're right.
Yeah, because everyone needs a mentor. Like mentors are things that everyone needs. Everyone has a teacher. They teach them things. It's part of culture, where someone learns something and they pass down that wisdom so that the future can have that too. It's an integral part of the hero's journey. That I guess not usually mentioned very much. Part of the hero's journey is the return home. So towards the end, where the once young naive farm boy or whatever it is has completed their journey, and now they return home. And an important part of that is they become the mentor for the next generation, and they give their wisdom to the next generation.
Right,
and that's part of it.
I just know a lot about detective fiction. So when we talk about the archetype of the detective, we're actually referencing the magician archetype in Jungian psychology, because that is the guy. He is the guy who reveals the new path, the new truth that no one else can reveal. So they are casting the illusion away from the audience, saying, look, here is the truth, and hopefully the author knows what the hell they're doing to bring that about, so it's not a mess and it's not some contrived illogical mishmash of crap.
Exactly.
So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, I know that's not debunking anything he's saying, but he doesn't really talk about any of this stuff, so I just want to have some fun.
Yes, please do. Yeah, let's try to make this interesting, at least for our audience. All his audience wants to hear is Jordan Peterson's bad.
Evil. He's an evil, bad man. But yeah, the mentor is very powerful. It's very essential. I say it's essential. The character of the mentor is essential because it also affects a story in a very profound way. What I mean by that is that the mentor delivers comfort. It is the guy who knows things, the confident teacher who is there, and he has essentially all the answers relative to the character. Like, I'm going to use Star Wars. Most people know Star Wars. Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Is it in every movie though? I don't know.
It's not in every movie. Not in every movie, because not every movie follows the hero's journey.
Sure, totally, yeah.
Like John Wick. In first movie, he doesn't have a mentor. He doesn't need one because John Wick is the focus is not him.
He is the mentor.
They kind of show that he does have mentors, but he's like
mentoring the bad guys.
So when you have different stories, so the hero's journey begins with like a naive young like greenhorn person that comes out of nowhere.
Yes,
stories like John Wick don't begin with the beginning of the hero's journey. They kind of begin with he's already a master. Like, he's already gone through his trials and tribulations. He's essentially the mentor status, like master status. And it's just a story about a guy who's already awesome and has already gone through his trials and tribulations using those techniques. And we like to see that. It's a really interesting story. But in that case, he doesn't need a mentor. But he had one at some point. Like he had to have some mentor, some tutelage somewhere in his life, because everyone needs it. The mentor is essential, I believe. But you don't always have to have one in every story. Only if you like have a character that's starting off from the ground level, like Luke Skywalker or Rey should have had. That's why one of the big problems with Rey.
Rey didn't have a mentor, did she?
They tried to give her some. They tried to give her like a mentor in Han Solo. They tried to give her a mentor in Luke Skywalker, but she never actually learned from them. She kind of just taught herself things.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Well,
that's the problem with the new ones.
We had no idea Leia could fly and teach her how to fly and all that other crap off screen.
Yeah, she just could do it all of a sudden.
I can fly. Like, okay.
I was just rereading The Secret of Our Success by Joseph Henrich, and he talks in there about learning from models that match your sex, ethnicity, and are only slightly older than you. And they actually put
people in MRI machines, and when they watch models that are the same ethnicity and sex, it actually feels better for them. They get like pleasure out of doing this as opposed to watching opposite sex models. And I started thinking about that. That's really interesting in the context of what Star Wars is trying to do, trying to cater to, you know, men and women is a difficult challenge if you know any of this science, because the female audience is probably not feeling as comfortable learning from a dude. And it's just like an innate thing in them that you can't quite put your finger on.
But on a psychological level, that is also true.
Yeah. So it's weird too, because guys are feeling this, like a lot of the hatred for Star Wars is like, you know, you fucking shit all over our mentors. What do you do?
Exactly. And this really just stomped on Luke Skywalker. And there's a reason why people are mad at how they treat Luke Skywalker. Because he was supposed to be, he is the guy who's already completed his journey. He is the mentor, the guy who should be wise. He should be teaching Rey how to do things, but he didn't. They want to give him another cycle for some reason. Like, he's already done, but they want to give him another cycle. And it's interesting that you go into the psychology of this. And so men and women like different things. Surprise, surprise, right?
Oh,
so,
I know.
Star Wars is technically made for general audiences. It's appealing. It appeals to a general audience, not just like a specific narrow-minded one, but like it can appeal to different ages. It's accessible to children. It's not made for children, but even if George Lucas claims it is, I think someone made that argument. But it's accessible to children and adults. So that's what I mean by general audiences, and it can appeal to women or whatever it is. But the predominant audience for Star Wars are men. And I kind of
not anymore.
Oh, they're kind of actually. I don't know. They're kind of shifting it. They're trying to shift it.
This is why all the gender race swapping stuff is so misguided. If you think about it,
it doesn't work.
If you think about it, if people want to learn from models that are same ethnicity and same sex, only slightly older, and you're giving them Rey, who looks like she's like 20, she's opposite sex.
Exactly.
You're like,
it's how it goes. I mean,
in the foot,
she's not supposed to be the mentor; she's supposed to be the student. But
whenever you watch a movie, though, you're watching because you're thinking you're going to learn something. I mean, that's the whole enticement of stories. Like, they're
supposed to have something in there. And I just noticed something about modern media. I call it disposable media, where they kind of have nothing in there. It's just made to consume once and throw away. Whereas this purpose of stories is always to convey some sort of message or theme or something. It's something for you to take away from. A story like the old parables from the Bible. They were written with specific lessons in mind. Like the prodigal son. Like, don't take your father's money and then squander it and then expect to have a good life. Respect your parents, things like that. There's always like these lessons in there. That's why they've maintained life through all these years, because they have some life in them. They have some life lessons in them. Something important that you need to know.
Sarah makes an interesting comment here. She says, as a woman, I've never had an issue relating to the male characters or ones of different races. Interesting, though. The Peterson talks about this because there's no down. I think Henrik talks about this too in The Secret of Our Success. There's no downside for a woman to compete in male hierarchies. If a woman can place in a male hierarchy, her status will go up. But if a man competes in a female hierarchy, his status will go down.
Will go way down,
yeah. Which is the big discrepancy there. So that's probably that probably plays into the model thing. But go ahead. What were you saying, Smud Boy?
I was going to say I have this argument every other month, I would say, for years now with people online about the point of stories. And the first thing I learned in creative writing was that the point of stories are to entertain and to teach. And it doesn't matter how you entertain or what you're teaching, whether it's an actual ethic in society or, don't boil milk too long, whatever the lesson is, there's a lesson there. And I was
absolutely
to the point where either it's online, it's like, listen, I've explained this every single conceivable way I can think of. Whether you're not, if you're not stimulated, you're going to walk away from the screen. If you are stimulated, but you're just bored by whatever the message is, then you're not learning anything. And I'm trying to spin the cube as much as I can to present the proper face. Say, look, you're either stimulated and learning, or it's not a story. I don't understand.
Totally.
get it. Why can't I watch Transformers? Like, you can. Fine. Learn nothing. I don't care. Enjoy it. Have fun time watching CGI things smash into each other. Whatever you want to learn from that. That's great. But that's not a very effective form of teaching.
Conflict drives the story, because we are problem solvers, and if there's no conflict, nobody's solving a problem. So there's nothing to be learned.
That was the scene from Adaptation, right? That one where he's like, "Why can't I write this way? Because if you don't give me conflict, I don't care." Whatever the hell.
Yep, totally,
exactly.
Yeah.
On the idea of conflict, I want to make clear, because I know there's people who are really like anime enthusiasts. Like, this thing doesn't have conflict in it. It does. Like, Keisha Tenketsu is what they use over there in the East, and it's different than the Western media, because what happens in Keisha Tenketsu, it's more geared towards internal conflict. You can have external conflict in like a Japanese story, obviously, absolutely, but it's kind of geared towards more internal conflict. So while some stories might we will be interesting and well written stories, they won't necessarily have like the good guy going and punching a bad guy. A lot of the times it tends to be more internal struggles as opposed to external ones. And an example of that would be like a One Punch Man, like a modern example, where he's really powerful. It's called One Punch Man for a reason. They can punch one guy once and they just die. But the story isn't about him beating up monsters. The stories revolve around him fighting monsters, but the story isn't exactly about him beating monsters, because that's just kind of like something he just does easily. The story is about him fitting in with the world and how the world reacts to someone like One Punch Man, who has this like infinite power, and how he's feeling disconnected from humanity because of his power, and how he's feeling unfulfilled because he doesn't feel like a hero anymore. He doesn't have that rush anymore of feeling like he's being fulfilled by the things that he's doing, even though he got his wish of being powerful and being able to defeat bad guys. But he feels unfulfilled because he no longer feels connected to humanity. He no longer feels like he's being fulfilled by what he's doing anymore. And that's the internal struggle. So it does still have conflict, but not all conflict has to be necessarily external. There's actually different varieties of conflict. But
best stories have both, though, have external conflict and internal conflict.
Oh yeah.
And when the external conflict and the internal conflict conflict, that's the best story. Like, to achieve your external goal, you have some internal conflict that you have to overcome. I mean, that's the whole idea behind this. Is why they made Indiana Jones's fear snakes, because he had to overcome that internal conflict in order to achieve the external conflict.
That's a good one too. I mean, what does Ray fear? I don't know.
Nothing.
I'm gonna shut up because I wrote a book about that. So let's just keep on with it.
I'll be here all day. Let's see what else he says.
Types are stereotypes. Carl Jung's perspective of archetypes, however, gets a little deeper. As many of you already know, Jung was a contemporary and adversary of Freud, and while both men recognized what Freud called the unconscious and Jung called the personal unconscious, Jung additionally insisted that we have a collective unconscious. The unconscious or personal unconscious refers to feelings and information that was once conscious but has been since forgotten and or repressed, while the collective unconscious refers to innate, inherited psychological instincts and patterns of thought and behavior. The key difference being, in the words of Jung, that the collective unconscious is a part of the psyche which can be negatively distinguished from the personal unconscious.
The thing that bugs me here is the word innate, because culture becomes like a collective unconscious if you're following the traditions, because there is unconscious ideas nested in there, but they're delivered culturally. They're not innate in us.
Well, it's not just ideas, it's also patterns of behavior. So you're talking about operant conditioning.
Sure. Yes.
So whatever you do every day as a
religion facilitates patterns of behavior, right? Like don't lie is a pattern of behavior.
Turn the other cheek.
That's a pattern of behavior. Like yeah. But I don't think turn the other cheek is innate. I think the one that's innate is an eye for an eye. I think that's the one that's innate.
That's the one that's kind of natural to everyone. That's why we came up with the concept of justice. Because our natural instinct is to, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you right back.
Yes, totally. The eye for an eye is bad for society. The innate intuition is bad for society. Therefore, we have this cultural adaptation that we spread the meme, turn the other cheek, because it's better for society. And two societies, one society that has the meme, an eye for an eye, is going to devolve into chaos faster than the one that has the meme.
Exactly.
Turn the other cheek.
And the reason why is we have that is because probably someone down the line saw that turning the eye for an eye thing just created eternal vendetta. You killed my dad, well, I'm going to kill you for killing my dad. Oh, you killed my brother, I'm going to kill you for killing my brother. It just never ends.
Yes,
and it just kind of breaks down society and kind of interrupts our progress as people and culture and things.
And this is why we all hate The Last of Us Part 2.
Exactly.
not only do we not get any resolution, Ellie has been actively killing hundreds of people, creating another cycle of vengeance for every other family along the way.
And so they wanted to rail against vengeance and the cycle of violence. Maybe they should have gone another way. You know what I mean?
But I think Peterson would more likely call the collective unconscious storytelling and move away from the Jungian idea that it's innate, that it's in our genes.
Just by the fact that it does not, like the latter.
You disagree?
He's pretty heavy duty on Jung. I think he'd keep it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't listened to really any. People always talk about him being interested in Jung, but when I listen to his lectures and stuff, he never talks about Jung. He's always talking about the latest psychological study. It seems like he's reading modern science more than he's reading Jung. So
I think he's already finished his studies at the university on Jung, so he just sort of knows it at the back of his head.
Owe its existence to personal experience and consequently is not a personal acquisition.
It is quite certain that man is born with a certain functioning, a certain way of functioning, a certain pattern of behavior. And that is expressed in the form of archetypal images or archetypal forms.
Now, just before we move on, I want to clear up a major misconception regarding Jungian archetypes. Or more accurately, he does. In his last book, Man and His Symbols, he wrote that my views about the archaic remnants, which I call archetypes or primordial images, have been constantly criticized by people who lack a sufficient knowledge of the psychology of dreams and of mythology. The term archetype is often misunderstood as meaning certain definite mythological images or motifs, but these are nothing more than conscious representations. Such variable representations cannot be inherited. The archetype is a tendency to form such representations off a motif, representations that can vary a great deal in detail without losing their basic pattern. And so that's Jungian archetypes. It's the name given to evolved instinctual patterns of thought and behavior, which are often expressed unconsciously through our stories and myths, with the latter being where religions reside.
See, he doesn't make any distinction between cultural learning versus instinctual learning, which I just feel like is super important for this conversation.
Yeah, as soon as you say unconscious, you're implying instinctual. You're not aware of it.
Unconscious, you don't have any access to anywhere. So I feel like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah,
like you're hypothetically, there's some intuition in there that you have absolutely no access to. Then why the fuck are we even talking about?
A lot of psychology studies, even in first year, you almost throw that away, and you address the subconscious. You say that yes, there is definitely something happening there, and we have some access to it. We can monitor some brain waves, but other than that, the EKG only goes so far. We don't know what that means yet.
Yeah. Yes.
Just as turtles are born with the psychological instinct to reach water.
I had to look this one up because I was like,
turtles.
I was like, there's psychology of animals. Like
it's
get a dog psychologist on here. It'd be kind of awesome.
There is, but it's extremely basic. Yeah.
Well, is instinct psychological? I mean, I always think of psychology as like the apparatus of human minds, but
it would imply animals have a soul. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that the turtles are conceptualizing the ocean as some sort of archetype here. I mean, it seems like they probably have a thing that says go towards the sound.
There's definitely a stimulus response, but we have done studies with worms and certain pH balance of the soil, and they have learned behaviorally to avoid the basic types of pH in the soil as they navigate it. So there is learning taking place.
Learning, or responding to stimulus.
Yes.
Okay.
Through repeated behavior. You're right.
By the way, I did watch a Jordan Peterson lecture once, and he recommended a book called The Origins and History of Consciousness, which has been awesome so far.
Oh, really?
It's really cool because it kind of goes into the basic instincts, and how Jordan Peterson describes it, and it's pretty accurate as far as I've seen. I haven't finished the book yet. I'm in the middle of it, but it's been pretty accurate as far as he kind of uses the book kind of uses the hero's journey to describe consciousness, where we start off our naive selves is our kind of the animal brain, our base instincts and everything, where we want to be indulgent in the mother Ouroboros as far as it's concerned, the creation and destruction. And essentially what that means is that we kind of feel comfort. That's why we feel so much comfort in darkness and sleep and things like that. But we also want a yearning for inspiration and knowledge, which is why we climb out of that basic psychology. It's really cool. I don't want to spoil it for you too much, but I think it would have applications in some of this discussion.
Did they bring up Carl Sagan at all?
Not that I remember.
Okay, because usually that people mention the lizard brain a lot, and that's where it usually comes from. So I thought that might be in there.
It could have. I just may have forgotten that name, but it's been pretty cool so far from what I remember. I think you enjoy it.
Cullivar for $5 says A-Team greater than Peterson and Harris. I don't know if I agree with that, Cullivar. Definitely greater than Harris. I don't know. Peterson's
greater than Harris.
Peterson's a pretty high status, high IQ individual. I have I am not worthy. The Butter Amble for $5 says, not trying to plug, just really excited. I got 300 followers and over 15,000 views on my TikTok this week.
Nice.
Wow. YouTube moving a bit slow, but we'll get there. Yeah, TikTok is, I guess, all the rage these days, but that's congratulations, Butter Amble. That's awesome. Oren Montgomery for $5 says, just a reminder, Adam, that I'm still muted on Supervillains Anonymous show chat. I don't know why. I can't even super chat. Please write a note to yourself for Sunday. I did do a screen cap of your mention of that in the chat, and I sent it to Sitch, so we'll look into that. Sorry about that. The Hills for $2 says, good luck, boys. I'll have to watch the archive. Well, thank you for the super chat all the same. The Butter Anvil says, for $5, I've decided I'm A-Team until Sitch does midweek streams. A-Team gives bonus streams. Please get Rags. I'll give you large sums of money. Also, hi, Rags. Butter Anvil's a big Rags fan. We got to get Rags on the show. So I should definitely reach out to Rags. The Smoking Jacket for $2 says, commence the rite of Peterson. Omnissiah, bless us. Omnissiah, bless us. Am I saying that word right? No one for $5 says, you got Sitch's alt account on. Sweet. That must be a reference to you.
Yeah, and Sitch's alt account? Yeah,
yes. Why did you guys team up and make the exact same logos? What's going on there?
I actually didn't. I don't think I knew about Sitch until after I started my YouTube channel. I was like, oh, you like PSA Sitch. Like, who's this? And I looked into it. Like, oh, yeah, kind of, yeah.
Jacob Sanker for $5 says, the dragon originates from a mix of our predators back when we lived in trees, snakes and eagles. Yes, that is true. And my take is that those intuitions are definitely rooted deep within the lizard brain, the primitive brain, whatever you want to call it. So they still affect us. And then we take those intuitions and we turn them into stories because we want to really shake people up. Cullivar for $10 says 40K is greater than Peterson Harris. Wow. 40K lore.
Like Warhammer 40K?
Yes. 40K lore will make you feel taller, stronger, and possibly join a cult worshiping the Emperor. My lore channel, Terrible Fan Fiction Stories channel, is for you. Yes, you should all subscribe to Cullivar's channel. He makes great 40K videos. And I've actually read a couple 40K books. And I agree. As soon as I'm done reading them, I'm ready to join a cult and worship the Emperor because it just sounds so cool.
Everywhere I look, it's kind of strange. Everywhere I look, I see someone who's always been in 40K. Like, you've been in 40K. You also have been into 40K, and it just feels like, I don't know. It was like seeing The Godfather Part 3, where like the priest is taking out a stone from the water. And it's like it's been surrounded by religion its whole life, but inside it's dry. That's what I feel like. Apparently, I've been surrounded by 40K my whole life, but I've never absorbed any of it. I never heard of it.
You've never read any 40K or?
I've tried. People have sent me requests, and some of the chat has sent me like recommendations. So I have some. I haven't gotten around to reading.
Watch some of Colavar's videos, man. As soon as I started watching the videos, I was like, "Oh man, I'm going to read some of these books."
It's intense. There's so much more.
It's insane. I know I'm going to like it. I just haven't gotten a chance to read it yet.
I can see why it really stokes the trad cons up, because it really is like it's a trad cons basically utopia. So
finally representation.
Yeah, exactly. Jacob Sanker for $5 says, listening to his Bible talks, he brings light of ingrained biological phenomenon formed with metaphorical truth. I thought it was great for agnostics. Yeah, that's the appeal of Peterson all the way. It's someone who grew up on these Bible stories just to get a scientific view of them is, I mean, it's very cool. I love it. So, and J-Mac for $50. Once again, thank you so much, J-Mac. My mind says S team, but my heart says A team. We got to go with your heart, Jay, obviously. The heart can never be wrong, right?
The lizard brain says one thing, and the conscious brain says the other.
Yeah, totally. Got to go with your intuition sometimes.
Can be seen as a rendition of their mother archetype. Humans.
See, he even said, he's like, the ocean can be seen as the archetype of the mother. What?
What, the mother?
No, come on.
Is that the caregiver?
What is it? You mean
Here,
the
I'll
caregiver?
back it up a little.
Yeah, I think you mean
to being where religions reside.
You know, if you're going to make a video trying to debunk Jordan Peterson's archetypes, which are actually, Carl Jung's archetypes, use a proper terminology. That would be helpful. Like the caregiver, and I know we say the mentor, but the mentor it's come from the hero's journey.
Oh, really? The mother is not the archetype. It's
the mother. It's more the caregiver. And the mentor, and according to in terms of Jung, the mentor, I think, now you can correct me on this, Mud Boy, but in terms of Jung, the mentor is actually called the sage.
Yeah,
it's the sage or the wizard or the wise man.
The magician. The magician.
You guys bringing all the terms. I love it.
The magician is actually separate than the sage. There's a
they're different. The magician it's actually from a different section of the mentality. So the magician actually comes from legacy. Same place the hero archetype comes from, by the way. The sage actually comes from the exploration, your innate need to explore spirituality. And the sage is actually the next level of that is understanding, and the understanding forms into the archetype of the sage.
These are great. Did you learn these for writing to develop characters like this?
It depends where you go to learn. We learned the basics, but because the focus for me was detective fiction, I had to know like what exactly is the murderer, what exactly is the hero, what is a hero, how do you write a detective fiction hero? How don't you? Because there's actually additional rules for that outside of Jung, but because it's so predominant, it's like, well, you may as well learn the basics. And it's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible. And I forget all the others because they're all, obscure. I've never learned or forgotten about. But once you learn the one focus, it's like, okay, now I understand. Then you learn the hero's journey, but that's Journey of a Thousand Faces, a whole other ballgame. So that takes a few months to digest, because if you can go through like a chapter of that a week, you're a better man than I. And it's a lot of that's a thick, dense Joseph Campbell book. So you got to really take your time with that.
Yeah, they have to be in the mood to read Joseph Campbell, because it's basically written as a textbook. It's kind of dry.
With the psychological instinct to reach water, which can be seen as a rendition of their mother archetype. Humans are born with this.
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
I'm pretty sure it's a caregiver archetype.
Well, no, you're talking about turtles.
We're talking about turtles?
Turtles have...
It might be instinct of the mother.
First of all, turtles are not mammals, okay? They have zero parental investment whatsoever. What the fuck do they have a mother archetype for?
They just kind of hatch and they run away to the ocean. That's kind of what
fucking moron. A turtle has never been mothered in its entire life. Oh my God. Do we have to explain to him the RK reproductive strategies? Something tells me he doesn't know.
Psychological instinct to avoid snakes, which can be seen as a rendition of our monster or villain archetype. In short, we're not born with a clean slate. Anyhow, what exactly does this have to do with Peterson? Well, Peterson takes
absolutely nothing. But
so
he's going to try
to is false, guys. Did you hear that? All right, great.
Yeah.
Jungian archetypes and claims that very specific variants of archetypes, that being very specific Christian variants, are true. But we'll get to that in just a minute.
Look at that little eye roll there. He's like, yeah, these Christian archetypes are true. True. Oh, yeah, we're going to get to that.
I forgot. What does he actually describe what these Christian archetypes are? Like specifically Christian.
Just to be clear, Jung was an agnostic. So
really?
Yeah,
oh my God. Hilarious. Hilarious. If you read that book, Stephen A. Asma, Why We Need Religion, the guy is an atheist, and he goes into all the psychological studies. He goes into all the evolutionary psychology. That book just destroys this whole guy's career plan. Because, I mean, he's arguing against all these anti-theist channels are arguing against evolution. I thought we were all pro-evolution, guys. I thought evolution was where it was at.
The proven science.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
For now, here's an example of Peterson both endorsing and eloquently explaining Jungian archetypes in reference to snakes.
Awesome. I believe that the fundamental myths they're evolved. They're deeply rooted in us. And the right way of thinking about that is really, it's like the myth of dropping a stick on a snake. That's St. George, right? And the world creating hero very frequently creates the world out of the parts of a reptilian monster. Well, that's a story that's like, I don't know how many millions of years old. It's old. Snakes were eating us when we lived in trees. They were one of our primary predators. And the first tree-dwelling primate precursor who dropped a stick on a snake was pretty popular with the ladies.
And here's him illustrating how the Serpian...
I don't know why he picks these clips. They just seem picked at random. What point is he trying to make with that?
Temptation, maybe, because St. George and the Dragon, he sees the lady and he keeps going to fight, off to...
No, I don't know why Rationality Rules picked that Jordan Peterson clip. I don't know what point it makes to his argument.
I mean,
he's just talking about archetypes.
The hero who slays the dragon and saves a princess. It's a pretty good depiction of the hero's journey, like the monomyth. The young guy becomes a powerful knight, slays the dragon, saves the innocent princess, and gets the girl in the end.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good, kind of a summary of what the hero's journey is like. So it's pretty interesting. But I mean, that's he didn't specifically endorse Jung. He didn't even mention Jung there. It's more like the hero fights the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Archetype, among many other archetypes, manifests itself among our most beloved stories, such as Harry Potter.
Look, the second Harry Potter volume with the basilisk. Okay, it's magical kingdom. That's the school. The kids are in it. Harry's a rule breaker who's touched by evil. That's what makes him a hero. The basilisk is a predator. It's a snake. It lives underneath the school. It can shake everything to pieces. If you look at it, it freezes you. Why? Because that's how a prey animal responds to a predator. Frozen. It's a snake. It lives underneath everything. That's right, because the snake can shake everything to pieces at any moment. And the magical school is built on chaos. Harry has to go underneath, down, way down, to find the source of the basilisk. He actually gets into it through a toilet or through a bathroom, right? He goes to the dark place, right? The place of refuse and rejection, down into the bowels of the substructure to face the basilisk. What happens? He frees Ginevra, virgin, and he's half killed doing it. What happens? A phoenix comes along and cries in his wounds. A phoenix is a...
This video is garbage. I can't figure out why he's even... What does this have to do with anything?
Yeah, this is...
I thought we were debunking Jordan Peterson's archetypes. What is this all about?
What archetypes is he actually putting forth? I mean, it'd be kind of helpful to identify which archetypes he's putting forth and why.
Yeah, he hasn't named any of the archetypes.
He's going over like traditional stories and things, like storytelling traditions and the elements within. But
this isn't even archetypes according to Smud Boy. This is like these aren't even really archetypes.
Just mythos.
This is mythos rather than archetypes, really.
Yeah. They set up Harry Potter as the archetype, but the snake is not the archetype.
Symbol of rebirth.
Now, in my estimation,
is Phoenix an archetype?
Phoenix alone? No,
really.
Not really. Yeah,
it's a symbol. It's a cultural symbol. Yeah, but an archetype,
not a personality type
in of itself. No, it's
this is
not
just
that I know
Peterson interpreting Rowling in some fashion.
Yeah.
So good for him, I guess.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
It's really cool. I'm going to listen to Peterson some more on this.
How's this debunking Peterson archetypes?
I don't know quite
That's
yet.
a pretty awesome analysis. In fact, it captures one of the things I find valuable about Peterson. He's very good.
Oh, this is the fellatio part, you guys.
He's committed a horrible sin here. He praised Peterson.
before he fucks him, he's going to suck him off a little bit here.
Delving deep into the psychology of our stories and identifying their biological underpinnings. That is, he's very good at illustrating that Jung was right. That it's very...
See, that's where I completely disagree, because I don't think Jung was right at all.
Easy to understand why stories and myths, such as Harry Potter, are loved the world over. They're not...
that's why he says that, because he wants to tell his audience that stories are myths, because his audience really wants to hear, all these religious stories are myths, that's not true. That's his thing. He's like, the Bible's not true. It's all mythology. Yeah.
He wants just the stories of stories. Okay.
Yeah.
Up. They're expressions of our biological substructure. They reach deep down into the very core of our psychology. And because of this, they're extremely valuable.
Yes, it goes to the deepest that there is. That's what makes an archetypal story. There isn't anything deeper than an archetypal story. That's it. That's what makes it archetypal.
But why does Peterson put such emphasis on very specific Christian archetypes? And how on earth has he concluded that these certain variants are perfect and therefore true? Well, in his own words...
Well, okay, so let me tell you why that story is archetypally perfect. Okay, so here's the reason. It's because, as has been agreed upon by the sages of the ages, let's say, the fundamental reality of life is suffering and finitude. And you can layer on top of that, from an existential perspective, malevolence and injustice. And that's the lot of human beings. And so here's an archetypal story. The most perfect, innocent, sinless person possible is betrayed by his friends, his countrymen, and the foreigners simultaneously, for no crime whatsoever, in the most torturous possible way, and also abandoned by the creator of being himself. And he accepts that all voluntarily. You see, the reason it's an archetypal story is because you can't get beyond that. You see, it hits a limit. It's the limit of tragedy. And so that's where the perfection lies.
And to provide but one more example,
this is what McKee calls the negation of the negation, that you have to take your story all the way to the extreme of derivation to make it interesting. So this isn't just Jung, like a lot of people say this. Still, I have no idea what this has to do with debunking Peterson's archetypes here.
It's this next part here that I find really interesting, coupled with the first part.
On the Future Thinkers podcast.
Perfection lies.
And to provide but one more example, here's how we put it on the Future Thinkers podcast.
So here's an example. So why is the story of Christ an archetypal story? It's because you can't tell a more tragic story. Okay, so why? What's the basis of tragedy? The most terrible set of possible things happens to the least deserving person. Right, and so that's what happens. So what happens to Christ? All his friends reject him. Betrayed, tortured, killed. That'll do it. That's pretty good. You get social rejection, you get betrayal, you get torture, you get death. Okay. Plus mental confusion, terrible mental confusion about destiny. That's the Garden of Gethsemane, right? Okay, so that's on the tragic end. And then on the innocent side, he's the perfect man. And why?
Isn't it Gethsemane? It's not Yosemite, right? That's the Garden of Yosemite.
Don't know, actually.
I thought it was Gethsemane, but
why is he tortured? Yeah. Because he's good. Archetypal story. You can't push past it. That's what makes it archetypal.
Okay, so Peterson is of course correct when he says that the story of Christ is archetypal, and I go so far as to say that it's a pretty decent one too, but it's not perfect.
Yes.
That is, unless you redefine the word. One could easily make
it not perfect. Total Stitch's law right here. Let's argue about what he means by perfect.
There it is right here. Yeah, just redefine everything. Yeah, well, yeah, Christ actually goes, I think one of the founding stories of the hero's journey was the story of Christ. You have he starts off as just a regular guy who's just, the son of a carpenter, regular guy, just read that kind of an everyman. Which, by the way, the everyman is an archetype of Jung.
Sure, it is. Hell yeah.
And he goes to the trials and tribulations. He even has a tempter, a very, very important part where the hero's morals and principles are tested, and the hero will usually eventually overcome. They might fall for a little bit, but they eventually overcome. And you get this with Christ as well, where the devil comes to tempt Christ and say, "I'll give you all the power in the world," and he keeps denying him over and over and over again. And you get that. And then, of course, he goes to the underworld where he dies on the cross for everyone's sins. He rises from that underworld. I rise again in a few days, and he ascends to heaven. And it's one of the founding stories of the monomyth is the story of Christ. So that is true, but doesn't make it necessarily a religious myth or religious archetype. It's just you can fit religious stories in there. In that story, in the tradition.
But it's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
Okay. Well, even I would have a problem hearing someone say something which is perfect, and maybe Jordan could easily define what he meant, but yeah, it's not a big deal.
Perfect is totally subjective. Okay, one man's perfect is another man's
flawed.
Garbage.
Especially within the context of something which Jordan is trying to explain in that level of, like, he must have told like 7 different stories in that one telling, so I don't know.
I mean, with Jordan Peterson, going by what he knows and how smart he is, I would give him the benefit of the doubt. There's a reason why he specifically used the word perfect.
Sure, yeah.
Well, they're leaving a big part of the story out too. The whole idea behind the passion story is to introduce forgiveness into the culture, and there's so many scientific studies that show, if you have a culture that's not going to embrace forgiveness, you're going to end up in the tit for tat warfare that we exactly you're going to end up in feuding struggles all over the place that we talked about earlier. Like, that's the whole thing. The whole point of religion is to get that meme of forgiveness, which is counter to the eye for an eye intuition that all of us apes come with out of the box.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
Yeah,
that's that lizard brain, the darkness that we kind of evolved.
Yeah, you got to integrate the shadow, man.
I really like that book I recommended earlier, the consciousness. That's really interesting. It really goes into a lot of this. But we'll see what he says next. What he says next is pretty interesting. Going from what he said before,
the story more perfect. To quote Sam Harris,
we can go incrementally here, because I don't even buy that it's the limit of tragedy. I mean, first of all, the thing is anchored to a belief in human sacrifice. This is what is.
It's so bizarre that Sam Harris misses the whole point about human sacrifice.
I caught this too. This is where I said, "Wait a minute, what?"
It's like he's talking about human sacrifice as in sacrificing humans
like
to the gods.
We're Aztecs sacrificing all these people, pulling out their hearts and everything. It's not what happens.
No,
in the story of Christ. It's not what happens. That's not human sacrifice. It's a hero voluntarily taking on the burden of death for the sake of others. That's a heroic sacrifice, not a human.
Totally dying for your buddies. I mean, this happens in
war,
saving Private Ryan.
Police officers, firemen. Unless Sam Harris also agrees that when his fireman dies to save someone from a fire, that's also human sacrifice.
Yes,
then
exactly.
It's not. Christ's death is not human sacrifice.
Human sacrifice makes our fucking culture possible. That's why it's so disgusting that Sam Harris completely conflates this with some kind of cult-like behavior. It's like, dude, you wouldn't be able to walk safely from your house to your car if it wasn't for fucking human sacrifice. You nimwit.
That's why we see we see police officers, well, most of us do, a lot of us do, see police officers and firemen as heroes, common everyday heroes.
Totally. Because that's why we make them into heroes.
Exactly. These guys voluntarily lay their lives down for others, ideally.
Yes, exactly.
And do that every day. Not just every once in a while, but every day.
Yeah, Sam doesn't need it, though. He's cool. He's got his billions. He's got his compound. He's got his paid security. He doesn't care.
So weird about Christianity, from my point of view, is
that's weird, huh?
This is not a
heroic sacrifice. Is weird, huh? That's weird. It's a strange perspective.
Yeah, I know exactly.
This is where unfortunately
Sam Harris.
This is a temptation. This is a tempter right here. The bias. Okay, the internal bias, the internal tempter, to move away from your ordinary pattern of logic to demonize something that you actively dislike or hate. In this case, say with Sam Harris, it's Christianity. He doesn't like it, so he chooses to put away common sense, apparently.
Yeah, totally.
And to demonize it by calling Christ's sacrifice human sacrifice, as if people are dragging him, as if his own followers are dragging him to sacrifice him to God in order for to gain some sort of favor, which is not the case. Not the case. Jordan Peterson already said this wasn't the case. He voluntarily takes this on, not through brainwashing or anything like that, not through some more sort of manipulation, because he feels it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's much better, right?
That's what makes
people want it versus forcing them to do it. That's the whole idea behind the West.
Like brainwashing, enticement, things like that, severe manipulation. That's what makes it kind of human sacrifice. That's what makes human sacrifice. Either forcefully, like what the Aztecs did, where they kind of drug you on top of the pillar and cut out your heart, or what the more modern day cults did, which kind of like this convince you to kill yourself, that sort of thing. Those are kind of like the ideas, your shades of human sacrifice. What Christ did was he recognized that humans had this powerful sin, this original sin, that needed someone to go in there and die in order to conquer that original sin. And he didn't do that because everyone said, hey, Jesus, save us. Hey, Jesus, conquer the sin for us. He did so because he knew that was his journey, that was his quest, and that's in the story. And he decided to knowingly sacrifice himself, to go to the pains, go through all that damage and the humiliation, and then ultimately die so that we could be saved. That's the essence of heroic sacrifice. He voluntarily does. And Jordan Peterson mentioned this specifically just a second ago, that he voluntarily takes on this burden onto his shoulders, quite literally onto his shoulders with the cross. And what does he do when he's on the cross? He says, Father, forgive them.
Why have thou forsaken me?
Well, he says, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
They know what they do. Yeah,
they know not what they do.
Paul, Chad moved there, right there. Forgive them.
I mean, even Jesus had doubts occasionally. Like even he was human, because he was supposed to be. It's canonically, he is human. He is God made flesh. God made.
Are you a Christian, literature devil? I'm getting some heavy Christian vibes here.
It's a story. It's a powerful story. Also, I went to Christian school, obviously. So
I went to Christian school too. Yeah. I know all this stuff, but I'm like an atheist for Jesus, basically. I mean,
but I know the story. The story is hammered into my head for years. So.
Christianity gets the psychology right, though. If you think about it, we are born with original sin, because we're all born with the meme "get even," right? It's lie, cheat, steal, do whatever you can to get ahead. That's the package that we're born with.
You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah, it's a cultural evolution that turns us into something stronger, turns us into the type of person that would sacrifice for others, or would sacrifice for a wife or kids, or, I mean, without that kind of stuff, I mean, what do you have? What do you have?
I don't chaos. Wasn't it Immanuel Kant who had that in categorical imperative, where it's kind of like yes or no? If everyone did this, would society be able to function? And if the answer was yes, then it was kind of moral, and if the answer was no, then it was immoral. I mean, you have to, it's Immanuel Kant, so you have to just kind of take it or leave it. But it's kind of like that mentality. Like this, if everyone started killing each other and getting revenge, would society be able to function? Not really.
Not at all.
Well, the categorical imperative is more to do with the thing you believe in, regardless of whatever the outcome may be. It's like, I believe in the law, or I believe in not killing people because it's wrong. So that is the mentality.
All right, let's continue.
A religion that disavows human sacrifice. This is a religion that claims that human sacrifice is real and important, but there's only one.
See, he totally misses the boat. He totally misses the whole boat.
He's attacking religion as a whole, because that's what he does.
Yeah. It's kind of his whole shtick. It's where he gets all his money from, I guess. So it's okay, fine.
Oh my God. It's so mind numbing.
It was in fact necessary and effective. And that is the sacrifice of Jesus. I mean, to go back to what you were just saying, this is not the ultimate tragedy, because he did take it on voluntarily. It's more tragic if someone really gets screwed by the cosmos.
See, now you're just arguing opinion. We've totally slipped into arguing, your own subjective interpretation. Perfect. It's ridiculous.
But despite this, what if Peterson was right? What if the story of Christ was really archetypically perfect?
Wait a minute.
What would this mean?
Well,
hold on. He said, okay, let's redefine it. We define perfection or the word perfect. So, but he didn't do that. He just showed us a Sam Harris clip. What does he mean by perfect? Because I don't think Sam Harris said anything about kind of redefine perfect or define the definition of perfect or anything. So
yes, he just contested the fact that it was perfect.
Yeah, that's it.
This is like appeal to Sam Harris fallacy.
So what's his name? I don't know his name.
Rationality rules.
Rationality rules.
Woodford. Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're going to make an assertion that this redefine perfect or the definition of perfect is used by Jordan Peterson is wrong, sure, give us a clip of Sam Harris where he makes an argument. But when you come back, answer your assertion that you made before. Just tell me what you mean by perfect. Define what perfect means first of all, and then define what what it should mean, things of that nature. But he doesn't. He's like he uses perfect wrong. Here's Sam Harris. All right, let's move on. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so stupid because, like I said, perfect is subjective. Everyone has a different definition of perfect. My God, this is so basic.
Like, even if you think is the perfect is subjective or not, we need to see his stance on this. Like, it's a kind of important element to know coming from his argumentation. We need to know his stance on perfection. Is it to him subjective, and what his definition is? What he is asserting as a definition of perfect? Because he's the one that brings up the idea of definitions and the definition of perfect. So it'd be kind of helpful if we knew what it was, at least the very least, according to him, and why the definition contradicts what Jordan Peterson said, or at least comes into conflict with it. But we don't.
Yeah.
That's why this video was so disappointing to me. I thought, like, oh, cool. There's a guy who obviously knows the archetypes. He's going to debunk them, but he doesn't. he just doesn't.
Mean that it's of immense value because it would necessarily contain a great deal about our evolved psychology, but it wouldn't mean that it actually happened or that it's true, would it?
Now you might say, is it true?
Oh my God.
And the answer to that is, it depends on what you mean by true. Is Dostoevsky true? Well, it's fiction. Yeah, but it's more true than real. It's meta-true. It's more real than real. A great novel is more real than real. And a collection of stories like the Bible, that's more real than meta-real. It's more real than fiction is.
Okay, I have a perspective on this, but go ahead and tell, because you're a Jordan Peterson fan more than I am at the moment. So what is meta truth, meta real? What does that mean?
Meta just means to go beyond.
I mean, in terms of what does Jordan Peterson mean by this terminology he's using here?
To go beyond truth. I mean, he's pitching it as metaphorical truth. He's saying, there's truth here that is embedded in patterns of living that will give you better outcomes as a human being, as an individual, than if you live in other patterns. That's what he's saying. But this is where Rationality Rules wants to say that he's saying the Bible is actually true, like it really happened. No way. Jordan Peterson would never say that. Jordan Peterson goes out of his way not to say that. None of this stuff he believes.
I even had a sister, like nuns and priests, tell me that the Bible should not be taken as historical truth. It should not be taken as a history book. It's a book of stories meant to teach lessons. It's a story tradition.
Teaching archetypes. Yes. We all know Luke Skywalker never lived in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. Yeah, it never happened, dude.
But I'm going to do what I always do, and I'm going to reference Neil Gaiman. And Neil Gaiman, kind of to paraphrase him, he said that with verse, it's called verisimilitude, where we tell essentially lies in order to, and how Neil Gaiman describes it is, we tell lies, we tell untrue things in order to tell true things. We tell lies to tell true things. What that means is we tell things that never happened. Like we tell a series of events that never happened about people that never existed. But in the story, we have truth. We should have truth anyway. Ideally, these stories should have truth in them. And that's where we get our lessons, our identity, our ideas and things that from these stories. They're lies. These stories are not true. Even the stories that are based on truth, once they become stories, they tend to be embellished in things. We tend to rearrange them as stories. And what that means is we kind of put myth in them. We kind of put more extraordinary elements in them. because they're stories. And we want to make them interesting. We want them entertaining. We want to emphasize. The embellishments help us emphasize what we want to give across as message and theme and meaning. And that's where verisimilitude comes from, the idea of giving the story in such a way that even though we know it's not true, we can imagine it as such.
Was that was that his definition? Really?
That's the whole
not
point of
Gaiman specifically, but verisimilitude is, he talks about that stories as, I don't think he actually uses the term, but he actually uses the idea that stories are untrue things in which we use to tell true things.
That sounds like Gaiman, but the word, I don't think he defined it that way.
No, I don't think so. But I use the verisimilitude as how it's defined normally, where it's a story in such a way that the appearance of truth.
The appearance of the belief, like it's usually made to distinguish between what's real and what's believable.
Yes.
And verisimilitude is what is believable.
Yes,
so
what is believable.
I don't care about what's real. I don't care. Give me a lie that makes sense.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I kind of combine Neil Gaiman and the definition for verisimilitude because they kind of parallel. Well, verisimilitude, it's that idea of what's believable. Neil Gaiman kind of gives us a more Neil Gaiman kind of perspective from it, where we tell untrue things to tell true things.
Oh, okay. I was like, whoa, what did you say? Like, okay.
But I don't think he ever uses, I said earlier, I don't think he actually ever used the term verisimilitude, but he kind of speaks on the idea of it.
Interesting. Fascinating stuff.
Saying earlier, here's where things get really messy, and it's largely because of Peterson's etymology, and more specifically, because of the definitions he uses for words such as true, real, perfect, and fact.
What are those definitions, though?
This is where he totally strawmans him. That's why I played the clip in the beginning. Like he's making this giant straw man that Peterson doesn't actually believe in scientific truth. That Peterson believes Star Wars is like a documentary.
Like it really happened. Yeah.
When Peterson is talking about Harry Potter, he thinks these things really happened. It's like, what? Dude, you're nuts. You're bonkers. I can't believe you're just throwing away any shred of credibility like this.
But he also, taking this video in the vacuum, I don't think those words in this video were defined by Jordan Peterson. At least,
no,
he hasn't illustrated what Jordan Peterson means by these words, and he's just saying, he's kind of taking it as we know what Peterson means by these words.
I've never heard anyone say archetypically young or archetypically whatever. I was like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be archetypically like young? I don't know how you would interpret that, because when you're referring to archetypes and young, there's a list. There's examples.
Yeah.
So
a huge long list. He goes through and labels them all.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's like the hero archetype, it's the savior. Like which one is it? What are you getting at there? I don't know.
None of the clips that he's played counteract the first clip that I played, where Jordan Peterson basically, says that, there's these two different types of truth. You're arguing that scientific truth is more important than metaphorical truth, the truth of stories, the truth of fiction, the truth that tells us how to live our lives, that tells us who good people are, who people are willing to sacrifice for their community are, that teaches our children how to take care of the community.
Absolutely.
You're saying fucking little tiny scientific facts are more important than that truth. And Jordan Peterson's going like, sit down on my lap, son. Let me tell you the bigger truth here. And this guy's coming on going, no. Jordan Peterson thinks that,
Star Wars
scientific truth. Yeah, exactly. It's like,
no. It seems to me like every time I hear Jordan Peterson speak and he involves archetypes and story, he seems to be using archetypes and story the same way people have used archetypes and story for a long time to help illustrate facts and truth and lessons.
Sure, totally. The metaphor.
That's what I always got. That's what we got from Jordan Peterson.
Literally, metaphors are metaphorical truth.
Not that he thinks that Harry Potter literally happened, but that he puts forth these stories as examples as to exemplify essentially what he's talking about normally, like his scientific assertions and his psychological assertions, and then he uses story, metaphor, and myth to help us understand these more complex terms.
I like the belief that Jordan really, really likes Harry Potter, and he didn't explain why, but he just says it's such a perfect, wonderful analogy. Story. of everything I know about Jungian archetypes.
God, not true. Harry Potter is like needs work. Come on, man.
It really does. It really does. It's not the best book in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine.
As I said in the previous video, while this makes things confusing, it's not flawed. But what is flawed is that he goes on to assert that this metaphorical truth supersedes literal truth.
When?
Therefore,
Where?
if a fact is metaphorically false, it's also literally false.
See, if a fact is metaphorically false, it's literally false. That's what he's saying.
But where did he illustrate that Jordan Peterson bellows that?
He's going to show us a clip right here.
Okay, fine. Also, let's see. Jordan Peterson throw away all the science and logic.
I know exactly. Jordan
what was
Peterson.
all the stuff we just watched then? What was the point of all that?
Oh, that's all just fluff.
It's all just fluff. Yeah.
Who cares?
Guy gets multiple ads.
Of truth
are
those that guide action, and then the objective science is nested inside that. The ethical pursuit.
See.
That's, yes. How does that debunk?
So he's saying the highest truth is the truth that guides action, the behavioral truth, and then the other truths are nested inside of that. So he's not saying that they're untrue. Yeah. He's saying that they're a lower level truth.
Yeah, what he just said. Where's the part where he rejected scientific truth?
Yeah, listen. In the example that Henrik points out about how there are these traditional societies that have traditional ways of preparing food that takes toxins out of stuff that's in their normal everyday diet. Okay. They don't know that they're taking toxins out of their diet, right? That truth is buried in the cultural truth that this is our tradition. This is the way we do it to honor the gods or whatever reason it is.
It's like the brewing of beer. We don't know the science behind it, but we did it thousands and thousands of years ago, and it was cleaner than water. And everyone was drinking
beer. There you go.
It was
exactly.
And today we really appreciate the brewing of beer, and it's awesome.
But now we're at the point, and this is a beautiful thing about Peterson, because now we're at the point where we can find the hidden truths, the objective truths in the traditions. And that's why Peterson is interesting to people, because Peterson's going and explaining why these things are so meaningful to us in a scientific framework that people love. So rationality rules doesn't seem to get that.
Yeah, that's kind of why I started exploring Jung and everything more deeper than I had before. And it's because I wanted, for my channel, I wanted to explore why we feel the way we do about stories and characters, and why we, for example, a lot of people just hated Captain Marvel. A lot of people hated The Last Jedi. Why did we do that? Why do we have these feelings? And I wanted to explore things like that. And it's really interesting.
You should read, man. You should read Henrik. You should read The Secret of Our Success, because that book will like blow your mind in the context of the Star Wars debate.
I probably will, because I'm a glutton for knowledge. I like learning things.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm hungry for it. I love it. So if you can send me that
book,
and so I can reference it early and later, and I can buy it, because I have so many.
Joseph Henrik, The Secret of Our Success.
I have so many books logged away in my catalog, but I'm going through them. But I love learning new stuff.
I'm working on the comic every day. Like, I'm reading a couple books a week. It's
the burden of being an artist is you have to write and be the artist. I'm just a writer, but it's really fun. Learning new things really fun.
Just writers.
I'm just a writer.
I'm just writing nonfiction over here. Okay, fine.
Well, I write too. I mean, I ran a writers lab in Los Angeles for 10 years, so I know my writing. I know the negation of the negation, guys. Come on, give me some credit. Give me some credit.
In the realm of comic book writing, you're just in your writer. You're just a writer.
Dude, our ending is so good.
Supersedes the scientific pursuit with regards to truth claim.
But I've addressed
this. All he is saying is we have to hierarchically order metaphorical truth and scientific truth. And he's saying right now we're putting metaphorical truth way at the bottom when we should be putting it at the top. That's all he's saying. He's not trying to make this conflation that rationality rules is accusing him of.
In the previous video, and so won't do again here. But what I will say is that no, works such as Crime and Punishment, the Bible, and Theogony are not more real than real, unless, of course, you redefine the word real. But you know what?
That's the one thing I brought up. I brought up verisimilitude, because that seems to be where Jordan Peterson was going. Was that stories he knows? Like we said before, he knows like Star Wars and Harry Potter are not real. But
yeah, no shit.
But there's a reason why he said these stories are more real than real, because these stories, like these good stories, the Bible, for example, was one of the main examples that I guess they kind of use, is that the more what I think he means by more real than real in terms of writing and story is that they have these profound human lessons in them.
Yeah, they influence our fucking lives. Yes.
I think that's what he meant by more real than real, because while these are not true stories necessarily, that within them is truth, and very powerful, important truths that are more real than real. It's, you know how they you can have like an idea of seeing a character and they feel real to you, they feel human, they feel more human than people that you probably even know in real life. And I think that's what he means, because while that character does not exist, the patterns of behavior, the goals, the metaphors that you see in these characters and stories, those are true. Those carry on with truth, because again, verisimilitude is not necessarily real; it's believability. And as Neil Gaiman said, we tell lies in order to convey true things. I'm paraphrasing; I can't exactly recall the exact quote, but essentially we tell lies to tell true things, and because within those stories should be true things that we could take away from it, life lessons, true things about our psychology, our society, or the way we behave. All of these things, it should be in there.
Hell yeah.
I just found the quote, because I know you said the word verisimilitude, and I found the Harlan Ellison quote. He says, "I don't need things to be true. I must have them seem to be true."
There it is.
And the beauty of that is that you can lie to someone and you could lie to them about life, or you could lie to someone and tell them about life truthfully. So it's at the onus of the writer to teach people, whatever book you're writing, of course, about what is the thing they should learn about. Why is it so important you turn your blood into ink? Like, what's the focus? Why do this to yourself? Why destroy your mind and your hair and your fingernails to teach a philosophy or something, or an ideology, if you're really that crazy about what you think? There has to be a reason for it, and it can't just be, I like fiction. Fiction is cool. There's probably some universal that you discovered throughout your life that you want to share.
Yeah, exactly. This might be an example I'm thinking of, but remember 300 by Frank Miller?
Fucking love that movie.
Yeah, why do we like that? I mean, it's obviously not true. It's got monsters in it. It's overblown.
Underdog overcoming. Are you kidding? It's so. Oh man.
Yeah. There's a reason why the story of Thermopylae has remained with us for all of this time. It took place back in the Grecian days, and it's probably even embellished even then. And with Frank Miller, it's embellished even more. But we still like it, even though we know it's not true, because
underneath faced insurmountable odds.
Exactly, because underneath all of those monsters and ripped abs, are the idea that a small force can overcome a giant one against all odds. They didn't win. Obviously, they didn't win. It's not like David and Goliath. They didn't win, but they stood against many and bloodied them so badly.
They stood up for what was right.
Exactly. They faced certain death. They knew they were going to die. They went there almost to die, but they did so anyway, because they did so on behalf of those they loved, their society.
They protected their families, their children, their loved ones, their wives, their children.
That's why it stayed with us so long, because even though we know it's a lie, even though even the regular story is probably embellished to all ends, the truth there is what we see in the behavior and the actions of those 300 Spartans.
Yeah, that's the archetype.
That's what we take away from that story.
Yeah, I got about 10 minutes before I have to go, so let's
find the word real, so that someone literally being murdered is less real than someone being murdered in a novel. And as far as I'm concerned,
I know you like that complete mischaracterization. Yeah, Peterson doesn't care about real murders.
No,
come on. What the fuck?
Someone got murdered in a fiction story. Oh, that's awful. Someone got murdered in real life. Who cares?
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, that's Jordan Peterson all over you guys.
Intellectually masturbating on the graves of real murder victims.
Oh my god!
Wow.
I know. There's
I don't know if this guy's intellectually masturbating over that description.
I know. I don't know if you listen to Akira the Dawn. Akira the Dawn makes songs with Jordan Peterson stuff, and there's this one song where Jordan Peterson basically answers a question from someone who's contemplating suicide and gives them 4 reasons not to commit suicide. And that is like the most moving fucking song you will ever listen to. And to hear him say something like this about Jordan Peterson is just frankly fucking disgusting. Jordan really Peterson cares about people more than most people care about people. So this is just fucking
depiction
garbage.
Of Jordan Peterson based on a false premise. Like
totally.
It's a false foundation that he's building this building on, and it's going to fall over into a swamp like in Mighty Python. Okay, it's going to fall into the swamp.
He thinks he treats Jordan Peterson like Jordan Peterson is some biblical literalist. Fucking, this guy's bonkers. This guy's crazy.
Pretty sure Jordan Peterson is like the opposite of a biblical.
Yes, it's so far away from it. Yeah.
I'm not even that much of. I mean, I like Jordan Peterson. I'm a fan of him, but I'm not like a super fan like you and Stitch might be. Yeah. Even I know that that's a total representation of what he believes.
Well, I'm a super fan of Jordan Peterson simply because Jordan Peterson gives atheists like myself, who may be struggling, looking for meaning in their lives, because it is kind of a black pill to be in the atheist frame of mind, but to understand how these religions basically aren't meaningless. They actually do serve a purpose in a naturalistic framework, I feel gives atheists hope. So I feel like he does a good thing for a lot of people. And the fact that people like this, who I mean should be welcoming Jordan Peterson to make scientific understanding of religion open to people, it just totally floors me. This guy should be a Jordan Peterson fan. He should not be turning his audience. Look, there's 300,000 people that watch this video who would probably be a lot better off, probably not so nihilistic, probably not so fucking depressed, if they actually watched a Jordan Peterson video instead of watching this dumb shit.
Yeah. I like all of his lectures that he's given. He gives you real truth, and he gives you inspiration to back it up with.
Yeah. Yes.
You're playing a language game. Now, you've probably noticed that I haven't.
I know, it's laughable. It's totally laughable.
He's not made a language game.
Jordan Peterson is the one playing the language game here.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You're right. Okay.
Go join your buddy Sam Harris with his human sacrifice theory.
How come all of us can have a cogent, coherent conversation about metaphorical truth versus scientific objective truth without tripping up, understanding one from the other?
Well,
talk about the pros and cons of both.
The only one is the perfect archetypical story, which is like, okay, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, totally.
That's it. That's the only thing.
What does he mean perfect?
The thing is, Jordan Peterson probably went into it for like an hour, and he just
Jordan Peterson
out of context.
Even though I don't have a limited experience with Jordan Peterson, he probably did. He always does.
Yes, that's why these dialogues are good.
Demonstrated that
I tried to get a dialogue with this guy going, just because none of this stuff would last 5 minutes in a live stream. Like, all this stuff would come to light 5 minutes in a live stream, and it would be just what he was doing would be so obvious. But he won't. He doesn't want to talk to anyone who's going to destroy his YouTube career, driving more and more people to fucking nihilism.
Jungian archetypes are in any way flawed, and that's because, if I haven't made this clear already, I'm not convinced that they are. While I think Jung made many unfounded assumptions, I'm convinced that his central claim regarding archetypes was, and still is, solid. He's right.
See, and that's where this is so funny, because I completely disagree. I disagree with the Jungian archetype idea, the collective unconscious. I think it's garbage tier stuff. Evolution or cultural evolution explains it far more. Here, I'm going to read a couple super chats. Do you think I should? Here, I'll just play the rest of the video.
Right. If we want to know what makes a good story and to understand the deepest parts of our nature, then we need only consult our evolution. There's real value.
Oh, the irony of ironies. Oh my God.
What does that mean? Our biological evolution?
Well, yeah, or the cultural evolution. Good point. The irony of ironies is that's what Jordan Peterson is doing, you moron. Like, he's contextualizing the religious stories through evolution. He's doing literally what you're asking us to do.
in archetypes. But the problem, again, and this is where Peterson starts to sound new agey, is when he claims that certain very specific expressions of archetypes are true. Or as Harris puts it,
I will grant you that
metaphorically true. He's not saying that they're literally true. He's saying they're metaphorically
Star Wars
true.
literally happened.
You dumbass.
there are means that would amount to a kind of internal costume party where you can think in terms of myth. If you said to me, Sam, I want you to think of the rest of your day in terms of the hero archetype. What are you doing today to slay the dragon and bring back that hoarded wealth to your community? That's a pattern of thought that I have no question could have some utility, right?
Well, that's what
could have some utility. Immense utility. What are you talking about?
It might have some utility.
Yeah, if you want to be practical in what he's asking, it's like the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur doesn't get paid. He never writes himself a check.
Fuck yeah, exactly.
They work for free.
It's basically set a goal, and then try to achieve that goal. That's kind of what
Stephen A. Asma, why we need religion. Like, he pulls out so many studies that just prove the utility of that meme.
we were doing today, Sam.
Right. But again, the crucial bit is that in doing that, I'm not making claims to knowledge about the ethereal existence of archetypes.
What?
There's no, Akashic record or collective unconscious. I'm not making claims of that kind at all in order to find this way of thinking useful. And I'm not aligning myself with any provincial tradition of myth making, i.e. a religion, and claiming that my religion is better than others.
That's so ironic, because Sam Harris is claiming that his religion is better than others. It's fucking science.
Religion of anti-theism.
Yeah, exactly.
Is, as we see every time we open the newspaper, a divisive game that we have to figure out some way of unraveling.
The last point I want to make.
Jordan Peterson comes closer to unraveling that divisive conflict than Sam Harris ever will.
Is that Peterson himself is an embodiment of an archetype. He's the embodiment of the sacred lobster archetype.
What?
Okay, I'm joking.
That's obviously a joke. I mean, he has
Tens of thousands of people who are mainly young white males who are being rejected by society.
Oh my God, you nailed it. The fucking woke shit.
Okay, this is what I say at the end of every video on YouTube. The last 2 minutes are the craziest.
Oh, yeah. Here you go. The woke.
He protects, directs, disciplines, and gives conditional love. He tells his children how to figure out what they value.
This is a process of soul searching. What are you oriented towards?
How to sort their life out.
Clean up your room. That's a
good idea.
start. Organize your local landscape.
And how to improve themselves.
Stop saying things that violate your conscience.
Hell, he's even just released a book that's purpose is to advise people on how to live. And you know what? That's fantastic. People need loving parental figures, and in the lives of many, Peterson is doing a great service. But this explains...
What is this guy's archetype? Because it feels like, what's like the lying backstabber archetype? I'm curious. I'm sure it has a name.
The tempter. I mean, he's tempting you away from things that would benefit you.
Okay.
The stoning doubter? I don't know.
I mean, he's definitely dressed like the drug dealer archetype. So.
I mean, I said the tempter specifically is actually, from the hero's journey specifically. But,
okay, the tempter. I like it.
That it's an essential part of the journey. But Jung, according in Jung's perspective, Jordan Peterson would be more like the sage in this perspective.
Yeah, this guy would be the rebel, the jester. I don't know, one of those.
The creator artist? To a large extent.
I think the father is a manifestation of the sage. Like that's kind of what you get. Like Luke Skywalker, for example, is a manifestation of the hero.
Yeah,
Neo's manifestation of
the father is the sage.
Father is a kind of the manifestation of a sage, in traditionally speaking.
Yeah, Darth Vader is not really a good father.
That's why it's essentially part of the hero's journey. The monomyth is to conquer the father, or to face down the father. Because if you read the Hero 1000 Faces, it's part of the psychology that we tend to demonize the father and embrace the mother, which is actually, even back then, Joseph Campbell was making the criticism of the United States that a lot of people don't want to grow up. They want to cling to the mother and reject the father. Because the mother is the caregiver, while the father is the mentor, the sage, who kind of like, okay, son, you're joining the football team. Why, Dad? I don't want to join the football team. It gives you character. So he pulls you out of your comfort zone and teaches you things that you don't want to know. It's kind of, it goes into ritual and everything. I suggest anyone who wants to write, read The Hero's Journey and see what you think about it.
I read it a long time ago. Hey, I got a heart out here, so let's finish this off.
All right. And won't accept me,
I'll go for it.
Serpent, criticizing him, even if really deep down they know that at least some of my criticisms have solid merit. This isn't Jordan's fault, of course.
Okay. None of your criticisms have solid merit. You're a fucking lunatic.
But it's an archetypal irony that's worth noting. Anyhow, as always, thank you kindly for the view, and an extra special thank you to my wonderful patron.
Sometimes he says like this thing, like my fellow apes or whatever, insinuating that he actually understands anything about evolution, which he absolutely understands nothing about evolution. So color commentary for $10 says a tithe to the A church. Well, thank you so much for your contribution. Color commentary. Color bar for $20 says question for Smud Boy. The stories I write jump from protagonist to protagonist every story. So new story, new protagonist building off the last one. I've heard this may not be a good way to write. Your or literature double opinion. What, you don't want my opinion? You guys can jump in, but
sure. In my book, one of my rules for writing is to have two characters, the two personas that are against each other, the protagonist and the antagonist. If you have more or multiple characters, you're telling multiple plot lines. So you want to tell like an ensemble story or an ensemble cast story. And if you're doing that, you have to have a good reason. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's more complicated than telling a single plot line with a single antagonist and a single protagonist. So you can do it, but first do a short story, a 10-pager around there with two characters and see how you do. If that works out, then branch off, keep going, see how you like it, bring it into chapters, bring it into multiple chapters, bring in another character, bring another conflict with a secondary character, and deal with that. That's the best way to go. It will take you maybe a day or two, and you'll get a feel for writing that way.
Short stories are really good practice. Getting into writing short stories literally changed my life in terms of writing, because you need more discipline with short stories because you don't have the room to go off and ramble and things. You have to remain disciplined and focused. Yeah. But a good example I think of that ensemble cast you're talking about would be Avatar: The Last Airbender, because they go into so many characters, and each one of those characters kind of have their own arcs, and that's what you want to do. What you want to have to do with characters like that when you have a big cast, is that you have to remember, if you're going to add these characters, they have to be important. They have to be in some way relevant to this stuff. So if they're going to be relevant, they have to have their own arcs.
Right. That's why a heist film has every character has a specific role. And it's like, oh, he's going to do his thing. Boom, opens the door. The guy gets the cash. Boom. Here's the getaway driver. Like, everyone has a role at a certain time, and that's a very clean plot, so it makes functional sense within the story.
Daniel Choate for $20 says, I think the hero's journey would be better described as the hunter's journey. A reflection of that would be the gatherer's adversary, where evil comes to the hero and must survive, a la Ripley in Aliens or Sarah in Terminator. Interesting.
Not necessarily, no. You could look Jason and the Argonauts. That was a hero's journey. He had to save his homeland from his uncle who took the kingdom. So he has to go off and get the Golden Fleece. And he's all kinds of characters and temptations and struggles. So it really depends on the nature of the conflict and the central plot.
William Kurt for $10 says, Peterson's whole thing about more true than true is just a statement about the fact that fiction synthesizes experience over a long period of time, distilled reality. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. Yes. J Mac for $20 says, Jordan Peterson basically has the same approach that South Park took in the Imaginary Land trilogy. In the Imagination Land trilogy. I haven't seen that South Park, but yes, South Park is super funny, and those guys spill a lot of truth while they're making fun of shit.
That's a pretty funny episode. Yeah, it's really brutal. I like it.
Integral Lens for $5 Canadian says, ha ha ha, Adam, when you pretended to be Rationality Rules complaining about Peterson, no, I nearly pissed myself. You nailed it. Yeah. God, he just gets under my skin.
Utter Nonsense for $4.99 says, can't watch this, but this will be nice to watch at work tomorrow. Have you considered doing a political compass test or 8 value on a live stream? I think I did one of those. I think I did a moral foundations one, and I never posted the video. Yeah. But maybe I'll post it. Maybe I will post it just for fun. I'll have to dig it out. It was done a couple of years ago, so I probably changed a bit. Jacob Sanker for $5 says, DL read Berserk. It's filled with so much Jung psychology, Nietzsche psychology, and Campbell's hero's story. What's DL?
LD.
Berserk?
Berserk is a manga, one of the most popular manga I've ever written. I have the first volume, so yeah, I've been trying to diving into it.
Oh, you meant LD, Literature Devil, read Berserk. Yeah, I think Sitch likes Berserk. I think he's mentioned it before.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Alex Karras for $5 says harmonica noise. J Mac for $20 says white male, which is odd since I've been to quite a few Peterson lectures, and there is a lot of Hispanics that I see there. LAO, older gentlemen as well. Yeah, it's such a mischaracterization. He's obviously fallen for the fake news. The whole Jordan Peterson he's the white male guy. Alex Karras for $5 says louder Da Vinci Resolve harmonica noises. So that's all. I don't really want to ask you for any closing thoughts because I super have to go. So we'll go ahead.
I just want to let you just say that I had a lot of fun on here, and thank you for having me on.
And Smud Boy, thanks for coming on as well. Give me a link and I'll put a link to your channel in the description. People can check it out.
No problem.
I'll go ahead and leave it there. Thanks. This was Thursday Live with Adam Friended, Literature Devil, and Smud Boy. And take care, and we will see you all in the next video. Oh, wait. Smoking Jacket for $5 says, this archetype stuff sounds more and more like Plato's World of Forms. Interesting. All right. Take care. We'll see you all next week.